Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support our show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Sacred Symbols Plus, a PlayStation podcast supplement. My name is Colin Moriarty. Today I'm joined by a very special guest, the ever handsome Californian, Brad Ellis. Brad, welcome to the show. How are you today, my friend?
I'm doing pretty good, man. Feeling good. You know, Colin, last night I went to the gym, had some pre-workout. I haven't been having much caffeine lately. Had some pre-workout. Bad idea.
Yeah?
Real bad idea.
Why is that?
Too much, man. I had too much energy, too energetic. You know, Colin, that feeling like, I guess because you have anxiety too, like just dealing with sometimes like you feel like you're ready. You could like run a mile or whatever.
Yeah, like for 39 years.
Energy. Yeah, exactly. That's what it felt like. And I was like, oh boy. I feel like I need to be on the treadmill for an hour right now, even though it's 9:00 at night. I'm at home now.
I hear you loud and clear. It's so funny, man, because caffeine really does affect people in very specific ways. My wife is affected by caffeine. Like she'll know if she drank a Coke or something and she's like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. I can't go to bed. And for some reason, I just don't know what caffeine does to me, if anything. I probably have so much weed in me at all times that it counteracts the amount of caffeine. But some people are like, oh, it's too late to drink caffeine. It's like, I'll fucking kill a Pepsi at like 2 in the morning, like when I'm eating a burrito or something. I don't give a shit, you know?
Yeah.
But that's always been the case for me. I don't know what it does to me. I've never tried to cut it, but I don't really eat a lot. I have a little bit of caffeine in me, I guess, at all times. 1 Pepsi a day. You know?
Yeah.
So
I used to be like that, but over like the last year or two, I just felt like I couldn't have it as much or whatever. Maybe like I can have 1 soda a day in the evening or something. But other than that, it's like whatever phase I'm going through right now, I'm just like, I'm better off without it for now. But I do like it.
Well, I'm glad that you went and worked out. What did you do? What workouts did you do yesterday?
Yesterday was back. So did 3 things and 10 minutes of cardio at least at the end. I'm trying to do that at least. I want to do more cardio, but it's just so goddamn boring for me. I need to do more though.
Yeah, I understand that. Back. I've never done the back before, I don't think, or at least not intentionally, you know? Yeah. So I just do a little bit of lifting and a little bit of, we like to do a little bit of lifting, a little bit of trolling. But mostly cardio for me, for sure.
Yeah. That's good. Cardio's great for you.
I'd probably be dead if I didn't do cardio because I have like really high cholesterol and which makes a lot of sense. I eat like a shit ton of mayonnaise and, peanut butter and things that like you're really not supposed to eat. But if I didn't run, I'd be roly-poly, you know? And frankly, I feel it right now. So since we're recording this on a Wednesday, this will go live on a Saturday. Since Saturday, my best friend Ramon, who does all of our music for Last Stand, has been here hanging out because he has family in Virginia. He usually does like an East Coast swing. He's from Jersey. And so he'll do and he lives in LA, but he'll do like an East Coast swing. And so he comes and stays with us once or twice a year for a little while. And he's been here. And I'll tell you, man, I've been drinking so much that I got to do so. Like, I feel it in my body. Yeah. Like, it's not the hangover. Like, frankly, I'm beyond that in my life unless I really go crazy, which I don't anymore. But it's just the like bloated.
Oh, yeah.
Fat feeling. It's like after he leaves, because we're going to a brewery tonight, but it's like after he leaves. Yeah, I gotta like ease up a little bit on the alcohol, get back into the gym, be a little more fastidious, you know. But we'll get there. We'll get there.
Yeah, man, I've been dieting for the past 2.5 weeks now. It's going good. I've lost 4 pounds.
Great.
It's like 2 a week.
What is this diet? Tell me more.
I'm just watching my calories, essentially. Just eating at a deficit.
Yeah. What are you aiming
for?
I
think for how much I work out, I could eat 2,500. But if I want to lose a pound a week, but I usually eat around 2K a day, maybe a little less or a little more.
Yeah, I think
it's gotten easier.
It's hard. Yeah, so it's just calories, calories in, calories out. I'm a big believer in that. There is all sorts of like weird shit you can do biohacking.
Yeah, there's like keto and all that stuff. You want to get crazy.
But I'm not. We say this all the time. Like, there's just so much excuse making about it. It's like, dude, just eat fewer calories and you'll lose weight. I know that's my problem. I know that's why I have a little gut, a little pregnant or something like that. It's like, dude, I know I'm not like fucking stupid. You know, I'm like, putting down everything bagels at like 3 a.m. and not that late. My window of my OMAD has been stretching a little bit in the last few months, from like 8 to 1 or something. So I'm like,
okay,
got to tighten that up a little bit, and really I just got to eat less. But I'm the same way because I work out so much every day. Especially cardio is a very calorically intensive if you do like high impact training or whatever. So I try to get to, I'm probably in the every day 2,000 to 3,000 calories somewhere in there.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Really, I should probably. You're taller than me. I'm 6 feet.
I'm not much taller. I'm 6'2".
Yeah, right. So 2 inches. That's pretty.
Yeah,
pretty substantial. So. See, like I'm so jealous of bigger people from that perspective. Although I'm taller than average, like my dad's 6'3", and it's like, damn, dude, that you can eat a little bit more. You know, I always think about that with little people. It's like, damn, that must fucking suck. You know, you basically have to eat like a child, or you're going to gain a lot of weight, especially because they have a lot of mobility problems later in their lives and they can't quite move right and all that kind of stuff. It's like, damn, dude, that sucks. You know?
Yeah. Maybe they're used to it though. I don't know.
Maybe they are. I'm sure they are. Also, there's probably like some enormously obese little people.
Dude, yeah.
I would be. I'd be fucked.
Dude, that's what I want to see if they remake Wizard of Oz, dude. I want to see like the Munchkins, like like obese as you can get. That'd be amazing.
Yeah, dude. Like wider than they are taller. Yeah.
Yes. Pretty like a rectangle or something.
Right. Love that. Thomas was alone.
Yeah.
All right. So you and I have been talking back and forth, and you're going to kind of help lead this, I guess.
Yeah.
We've been talking about doing some tier lists lately, and this is what we're going to do. I want to just call this episode Brad. I don't know what we're actually going to rank all told, but something like Colin and Brad rank things or whatever. But
yeah.
Maybe we have something special on our hands here. I have no idea. But originally I wanted to do Mega Man Robot Masters, which I think would be really fun from 1 through 11, I guess. And you said you weren't quite prepared for that. Some Mega Man fan, Brad. I want 1,000 words right now on Dive Man.
I can't give you that. It's been too long, man. I haven't played through all those in so long.
I need a mini video, 5 minutes on Flame Man's turban. And is it racist?
I could do that.
So we're going to put that away because I want you to, and I probably should go back and play as well. I mean, I know those games intimately, but I haven't played in a while. I was saying that to Micah yesterday, actually, when we were talking about what we were going to do here. I'm like, I actually probably haven't sat down and played the Mega Man games all the way through in, I don't know, a long time since I lived in California, probably. So we'll get to that and we'll do that. And that will be a big episode because there's so many of them. But, today, instead, you thought maybe we would do some other tier lists, and I guess this is like some sort of module, like some sort of website, right?
Yes,
and this is all built in. Oh, and then so you can use so this is already built.
Yeah,
like what we're gonna use. Do they have a Mega Man Robot Master one already?
Yeah,
built?
They did. I checked. There's
sick.
Like multiple versions of that.
Oh, that's sick. Love that. What a great idea for a website.
It's fun.
So we're gonna do this. All right. So take it. Well, I don't know. How do you want to do this? You want to lead the way?
Yeah, sure. So just for everyone, if you're listening only or whatever for any reason, better off watching it because you'll be able to see the lists and all that stuff. But what we're going to do for the first tier list is we're going to rank all of the consoles out there. But this also includes handhelds and for some reason PC. I don't know why. It's just there. But we're going to rank these, Colin. We're going to go through them. We're going to place them. We have the tiers are GOAT for the best, then S tier, then A, B, C, then trash. I got a few in my mind that will be in trash right away.
Sure.
So we're going to go through these one by one. Then after that, we'll do a different one, a different list.
Cool, man. I can do this forever. This is fun.
Yeah.
I've seen these before. I know this is an older thing, but I don't know if I've ever done one, to be honest. I don't know where I would have. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. All right, Colin. Let's start with our beloved GameCube.
Hey.
How you feeling about the GameCube?
A?
Feeling probably? A? A's pretty respectable. I think that's pretty good, yeah.
What do you think?
The GameCube is sweet. It's not like the best, I would say, out of Nintendo consoles, but it is an excellent console with some weird things about it, I guess. But I think it's an A is great. And Colin, we can always rearrange stuff as we go, too.
Sure.
So we get a little more in.
I like A for GameCube. I was a huge GameCube fan. I've said this many times, but I'm bothered by the deep revisionism of that generation. Not in that it's good, because I thought it was great at the time, but that people are like, oh, I always thought it was good, dude. The console sold like 24 million units. You could buy it for $100.
Yeah.
You guys didn't care. You didn't buy the games. You didn't play the games. You're all a bunch of fucking liars. But the GameCube was exceptional, and yeah. I thought it was a kind of a return to form in some sense for, as they felt their way through the N64, and we'll get to that, I guess, at some point. But yeah, GameCube I'm very happy with that, because there are better Nintendo consoles, but there are certainly worse Nintendo consoles. So
yes,
so I'm very comfortable putting GameCube, the beloved GameCube with that wonderful controller, at A.
Yeah. Great library, really great games in there. Also loved the Game Boy player, the Game Boy Advance player. That was good shit, but you might want to, I don't know if we'd want to count that because it's a separate attachment, but that was a nice feature I really loved. The link cable stuff was very interesting. Cumbersome, but interesting for some games. Crystal Chronicles, Four Swords Adventure.
Sure. The whole 3-pillar thing that they were doing, or trying to do, with GameCube, GBA, and then DS, and how that kind of just, Game Boy and the brand kind of got subsumed by that extra port on the DS, which was great. It's so funny that comes up, because Mike and I have been talking, I feel like it's an impossibility, like literally impossible, that the Switch isn't backwards compatible. And the only thing I think left to, or the Switch 2 will be backwards compatible. And the only thing left to wonder is, will it have a GBA like port where the old cartridges go in, because they've made a new style cartridge, which I hope they kind of have, because it would give them more room, probably,
memory space,
dynamics. And so, yeah, the GameCube was very modular and interesting. And I think we owe a lot of that modularity actually to Sega, as I've said many times, and them just not really figuring out exactly how to go and how to do it. But but yeah, nonetheless, very happy with this at A.
All right. PSP time. How do you feel about PSP, Colin?
PSP. I like the PSP a lot. I'm not as crazy about it. I think the Vita was a superior machine, but I guess you could put that in the A, maybe B. I don't think any higher than that. It's just not. I'm very weird as PlayStation fans go, where the PS2 is my least favorite PlayStation console, though it's a legendary console, and the PSP is, I was fine with it. I was much more into the DS at the time than the PSP. So yeah, that's I don't know what are you feeling on it?
So I didn't own a PSP, but I did play it, and I remember liking. There's some good games on there, like Crisis Core was good at the time. There's Final Fantasy Tactics. There was Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep. There was the Castlevania Dracula X Chronicle thing.
Sure, that's when I bought mine, because it came. There was like a special package with it, and that was in 2007, I guess. That's when I actually bought a PSP.
The God of War games are great on there also. I haven't played Daxter or Secret Agent Clank, so I don't know, but I think B's fine for now. We can always revisit it, though, if we want to.
Yeah, I think B's okay. I mean, a lot of people are going to be upset about that. That's fine.
Chris will be upset.
Yeah, the PSP's, it's fine. It's good.
Okay.
It's good.
All right. The original Xbox.
I mean, maybe an A. I mean, in some ways, it's really important. But how are we judging it? Like, based on what the machine was, it's probably the most forward-thinking console ever, in some sense, with its Ethernet cable. I mean, I've talked about that many times in my career, but that's a legendary move to say, like, we're not going to include a phone port at all. Like, the fidelity of the machine and the experience is more important than wide access.
Right.
And that's a choice they made. They also, the original Xbox Live stuff happened on Xbox beginning in 2002. And the ability to buy digital games began on Xbox as well. You had to do it over like these demo disc type things. It wasn't the way the Xbox store would be on 360 beginning in 2005. But so there's like some really important shit that the console did that I thought was way ahead of its time. I think the catalog of games is relatively weak, though, comparable to PlayStation 2 and GameCube. I mean, so I don't really know where to put this. If I put it any lower than an A, I'll almost come off as biased. And I do think it's some there's some obvious import with what it was doing. It was incredibly influential, like I said, and everything it did was heavily copied in some ways. Yeah. And the same thing was happening with 360. So it's hard for me to kind of clown on the original Xbox in that way. I owned one. I mean, now I didn't own one until I bought it in 2003 for KOTOR, as one does. But before, so I wasn't really like that into it. But towards the end, I got pretty into it. That's probably where I played the most games online in my entire life, was on the original Xbox. So anyway, what do you think about it?
I think A is fair. I think there's actually some really cool games on here that I liked. I never owned an Xbox, but I did play a lot of my friends' Xboxes. Like Ninja Gaiden Black's one of my favorite Xbox games, the originals. Absolutely adore, of course, Halo 1 and 2. Psychonauts, I thought was really awesome. Fable, I was really into. I never played Knights of the Old Republic, so I can't speak on that, but I know people love that. Because it had like, they had Jade Empire 2, another BioWare game. They had Knights of the Old Republic 2. They had Morrowind. They had
Jade Empire is kind of like the forgotten BioWare game.
I don't know if it's good. I have no idea, but I know some people that liked it. I think A is fine for it right now, but we'll see as we get deeper in Colin how we feel about everything at the end.
Okay.
We will rearrange stuff all we want. All right, now here we go. TurboGrafx. I have no idea where to put this. I have very little experience with this.
I only knew one person that owned one contemporary at the time. It was my brother Dagan's friend, John, who lived next door to us. And in the house that I grew up in until I was like a toddler, and then we moved. So NEC, it's hard to like really, it would come up. There was a bunch of shit you could do to it. The PC Engine, right? You had like the CD add-on stuff and the cards you would put into it. There's some seminal shit on it, like no doubt about it. A lot of like Hudson stuff, like I think Star Soldier. The first East games I think were TurboGrafx games.
Oh, I didn't know that.
East 1 and 2. So, but it obviously isn't an important console, and I also don't have an enormous amount of experience in it. I played it much more as an adult than I did as a kid. So,
do you want to put like a not enough experience tab on here?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I would be very comfortable putting this in the C or trash category personally. Okay. I mean, it's obviously not, but it's really up to if you feel
Let's just put in C for now.
Okay, yeah, I've had hours of experience playing TurboGrafx. It's not like
okay.
It's not a thing that
I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, it's not. But to me, that's nothing. I mean,
yeah,
and it's a novelty machine. I think Dagan owns one.
Cool,
but I never even collected for it. But yeah, that's what I remember. Is his friend John DePaulo was the only person I ever knew. It's the same thing when we get to Master System later on. It's on there somewhere. It's like I only knew one person that had one of those too, but I've played that a lot more. So
okay, all right. Next, we have the Sega Game Gear. I'm not a big fan of the Game Gear, honestly. I thought it was cool that it lit up or whatever, but that was about it. The batteries...
It was an amazing piece of kit, actually.
It was, except it as a handheld, it died incredibly fast.
Right.
If you had it plugged into the wall, sure.
Yeah, you needed the RF switch.
But if you take it with you somewhere, dude, that thing dies quick. Let me look at their library. Well, actually, they will see that. Let me just see best Game Gear games real quick. So
I don't actually. Actually, that's a good idea. I should have done that with TurboGrafx. I didn't even think the best Turbo. I should do that. Best TurboGrafx games. Oh yeah, Splatterhouse is on.
Yeah, Streets of Rage 2, which is an amazing game. I don't know about the Game Gear port.
Right.
A lot of stuff actually. Sonic was
there was a lot of
Mega
ports.
Mega Man, yeah.
Right.
Castle of Illusion, Streets of Rage 1.
Because I'm trying to get because there was the Nomad later on, right? And I don't even know if that's on this list.
Yeah.
Which was like the Genesis, right? Wasn't there like a portable Genesis? Sega Nomad,
I think so.
Wiki. Yeah,
there's
Genesis
a
Nomad.
Game.
Yeah, this is a Genesis Nomad.
Fantasy on Shining Force. That's cool.
Yeah, there's some cool stuff. I don't have enough. Like, so I never owned a Game Gear. Game Gear was something that my Sega nerd friends had because I had Sega friends, obviously. Yeah. And specifically my friend Eric, who was the one that had like all my experience with the peripherals on. I had it my own Genesis later on, but like 32X, Sega CD, Game Gear. and Saturn, until a
Yes.
certain point as well, um, was all experienced through my friend and multiple friends usually. And you're right, the Game Gear to me was very impressive. See, the thing about Game Boy, and I think you just had to be there to know this, and you were there, so I think you probably just intuitively know this, is like the Game Boy kind of went away. Not it. They kept making games for it, but Game
Mm-hmm.
Boy was basically an irrelevance by the time Pokemon came out. And then Pokemon really heavily revived it. Pokemon came out 9 years after the Game Boy launched. I mean, people have to remember that.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much the game, other than Tetris and maybe the Super Mario Land and a few others, that is associated most with the Game Boy. And there's that little interstitial period. And Game Gear to me kind of came in that interstitial period where it almost seemed to me, if I wasn't a Nintendo Power reader, which I was, I would have probably not even known about most of these Game Boy games. They had no cultural relevance with like anyone. Like there would be
Right.
a ever shrinking Game Boy section in the store. By the
Mm-hmm.
time you got to the N64 era, it's just funny. The Game Boy launched with the NES, all through the SNES, all through the N64. It was the
Yeah.
handheld into Pocket and Color. It wasn't until 2001 and the GameCube, right before the GameCube came out, that we got GBA. So I don't know, man. That's a long-winded way of saying that I just think the Game Gear kind of is an oddity more than something that drew people. I would put it a C, but it seems there are going to be Sega things that are much higher than this. I don't want it to
Yeah.
seem like
We'll put it the top of C right now.
Yeah, that
How about
works for me. That works for me.
Because
Yeah.
I think there's some cool games on there, but I just think the hardware is annoying with all the batteries and stuff. The portability factor's poor, in my opinion. All right, Colin, the PS Triple. How you feeling about this?
I mean, no lower than S, I would say.
No lower than S. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I could make the argument that the PlayStation 3 is the best PlayStation generation. I mean, I think that's a somewhat easy argument to make, especially from a game point of view. I don't think from a hardware point of view, courting quality third-party development, all of that, but I could make the argument that it's the best PlayStation hardware. Now, this is where I think that I'm an oddity with a lot of people that are PlayStation fans who would, I think, point to PS1 and especially PS2 as being that, but I just don't feel that way. PlayStation 3 had a very interesting story and arc. It was pretty much, it was never dead. People overstate like how poorly it was doing, but it was in bad shape. It was getting the shit kicked out of it, and it turned it around. And within the generation, usually you have to turn the generation over to turn something around. You look at something like Wii U to Switch or whatever the case might be. Here, I just feel like, or Master System and the Genesis is another, and they basically launched Genesis twice in order to take advantage of that idea, in '89 and then again in '91. But it's hard for me to argue against the PS3 when you have the Uncharted trilogy, you have The Last of Us, you have the Infamous games, or two Infamous games anyway, you have the Killzone games, the Resistance trilogy. There's just the shit, Little Big Planet, and things that people care about. It's really, really strong console.
Yeah.
And I think its story is kind of interesting. It'll end up being the worst selling PlayStation console, including the PS5, which will pass it probably next year. But I still think it was a really special machine. And maybe I have a nostalgia for it in some sense, and a soft spot for it, because it was the machine that was kind of coming out when I joined the industry full time, and ultimately rose to the head of covering that console and knowing it so intimately. So it's always going to have a special place with me. But I personally think an S. I don't know that you're going to get much lower than this for any PlayStation hardware, to be honest with me. So,
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
I think for a first party perspective, carried the system really hard for a long time. This is when like Sony first party, I guess, really started getting names for itself. Like I even think about, I loved Puppeteer, man. It's just a weird small.
It's very weird that they never. It's not that you make a sequel to that game or whatever, of course, but why wouldn't that game came out fall 2013? I want to say like right before PS4 came out. There's no backwards compatibility, so certain games, both in third party and first party, got caught in that. The second Castlevania game came out after that. The South Park RPG came out after the new consoles came out, which was awesome. So yeah, there's something about just the way that the newer console played with the old games that I think kind of helped relegate PS3 to a memory as opposed to something more worthy of respect. And
Yeah.
Shout out to the console. I love it.
The only thing I have against it, Colin, is no fault of its own, is just that the JRPG output was not super hot at that time. It was not doing very well. Like, we had Final Fantasy 13, which wasn't great. I know 13.2 is better, but
It was
I'm
an
not a huge
endless.
fan of 13.
Yeah, no, I'm
Just
sorry.
RPGs in general, I felt like were not doing super hot at that time. Luckily, near the end, I think it picked up a bit, like with Ni no Kuni and stuff, but
sure.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think S is totally fine for now.
Yeah, I would agree. I would just think that Japanese role playing games and Japanese development just kind of lost its way for a while. And I actually think that somewhat started in the PS2 era, if anything, and really got bad. And to its probably, like, if you think 2008, 9, 10, 11, like that space of time, it's like, oh man, like, can you pull out of this?
Mm-hmm.
It's bad. I think there were certain games that were kind of showing some hope. Dragon Quest 9 on DS was one of them, and a few others. But yeah, you're right. Ni no Kuni later. That's 2012, I think. 2013, maybe even. Actually, I think it was 2013. I think I had it that holiday of 2012 and I was playing it. God, I love that game. That game was awesome. So you're right that they were able to pull out of it, but I just feel like things were lost for a while. That's why I always think about when Inafune left Capcom, what he was saying about Japanese development was obvious. What he didn't see, and maybe I didn't foresee either, maybe because I believed in people like him a lot more than maybe I should have in some sense in terms of their vision, was, is this ever going to get any better, or have things swung permanently to the West now? And I would argue per capita quality game releases out of Japanese known entities, A and AAA studios and publishers, is way higher in a quality level now. You think about a Resident Evil, like how many of those are coming out in the West? And I'm not saying horror AAA games. I'm just saying games of that caliber, right? Or a Final Fantasy 16, a Final Fantasy 7 remake. A lot of good shit coming out of Japan now. So they did turn it around, but you're absolutely right. It was, dude, I mean, I like the guys that worked there, but it was like going to NIS and Xseed, even in Japan when I'd be there. And it's like, damn, what the fuck are you publishing? You know?
Yeah.
I don't even want to say some of the games, because it's just like there was just a shit ton of games where I'm like, what is this trash?
Yeah.
It put me off for like a whole generation. I actually consider myself, that's when I really started playing shooters and like opening my mind to a lot of different things, because there was nothing else to do. So I'd usually spend 50 hours playing these fucking role-playing games. And then when I played Final Fantasy 13, I wanted to kill myself. So I really do want them to re-release those games, though. I never played the second or third ones, just to do it again and see.
Yeah.
You know, maybe I was wrong. I don't know.
You're not wrong about 13. I played it, a little bit of it, like a year ago, and it's not great, in my opinion. Not good. All right. The Atari, what is this, the 2600?
Yeah, it looks like it's a small... So yeah, that is the 2600. Yeah, the joystick.
Now,
give it that away.
I have no love or nostalgia for any Atari games. Atari games never looked appealing to me at all. In my opinion, video games didn't start until the NES, essentially. I don't give a shit about anything like that. But how do you feel about it?
I mean, so Dagan's first console was the 2600, and we had one available to us when I was born in 84. So by the time I was cognizant, we had an NES. And so the 2600 was kind of relegated. I think actually, in fact, we might have even put it away at one point and then brought it back, like put it in the attic, you know, and then kind of... I was a really big fan of the game River Raid. I don't know if people know that Atari 2600 game. I fucking love that game. That game is so good. That's definitely the best old game, like really old pre-NES game, in my opinion. So I'd get really addicted to it, and I would, you know, even as a kid, and I would go back to it. But this is probably an S-ranked console. I mean, the Atari 2600 is vital.
Yeah.
The thing about, and maybe you put it in the A, and no lower than A, in my opinion. The games are very unimpressive. I mean, you go back and look at some of even the games people like, Adventure or something like that. It's like, damn, this game kind of sucks, right? People make fun of the shitty stuff like E.T., but even the great stuff like the Pac-Man port. Pac-Man's the best-selling game, the original Pac-Man on Atari 2600, but that port is horrible. I mean, if you go look at it, it can't do what the arcade machine does, but man, it's mind-bending to think when this thing came out in the fall of 1977.
It's crazy.
I mean, it's completely insane. It wasn't the first, and you had things like Contemporaries and Television, ColecoVision, Fairchild, Channel F, and like other things, but this is an imaginative, vital machine selling 25, 30 million units at the time is no joke at $200, I want to say, which is a pretty expensive machine in the late 70s and early 80s. In fact, that's very expensive.
Yeah.
And I think that you got to put a little respect on the 2600. I'm not saying you, but just people generally. It's not something you go back and play. Like, it's very similar to very few people want to go play with a supercomputer and punch cards. Right. But everyone knows how important those computers were to getting us to a graphical user interface, or first just showing anything on a monitor and then ultimately to a graphical user interface and so on and so forth. It's cool and it's vital, but no one wants to use punch cards. It's very similar to Atari 2600. You want to use a joystick with a single button on these very limited games, but just think about it through the lens of the time, and that some of those games really do actually hold up. The unfortunate reality was that some of the best games were ports of arcade games, which were already way better at that in that era. But they were and they got to Atari 5200 and all that kind of stuff, where they were able to do more. And Atari kind of did exist in the background through the 80s and into the 90s, as it segued more into like a PC-esque brand in some sense, like an early. But the VCS, like the 2600, is, I don't know, it's an amazing machine for its time. I can't hate on it. It's just, again, I just think it's not something you played Pentiment recently. And like, you look at the art in that game and it's beautiful, the illuminations and all of that. But the art style of the time was like, no one could paint like they would paint in the Baroque era and the Renaissance era, and that real realism. Like, this was actually kind of the best they could do. And you look back at it and you see it for its merits and its beauty, but it's not a fucking Renaissance work. It's the difference in quality is obvious. You just have to realize that you wouldn't have gotten one without the other. And that's where Atari 2600 comes in.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think the Atari is extremely important in video game history. I just think about looking at all these consoles on here and going back and actually playing them. I could have a good time with a lot of these. Atari, I don't think so. I don't think I'd have very much fun playing Atari nowadays.
That's fair. That's a fair. What do you want to say? A? Or do you want to even go lower than that?
I'd put in B.
B? All right. I mean, I don't want to dominate the list. Let's put it in B. We can always reassess this later. Like you said.
We can reassess. All right. Now, the Nintendo 64. I think the Nintendo 64 is pretty great and pretty bad at the same time. I think there's incredible games on here. Mario 64, Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, GoldenEye, Banjo-Kazooie. Lots of good shit on here. The 4 players, man. Smash Brothers, 4 players back in the day.
And Mario Party and golf
fun.
and all
Mario Party, yeah.
Yeah, everything was the 4-player dynamic was huge. Huge.
Yeah, it was so fun. I look at the 64 very fondly. I'd put it pretty high, but what do you think?
The N64 was a game or a console with some exceptional games that was a wonderful second console. And it was the first generation where I was like, I can't. My brother already had a PS1 by the time N64 had come out the next year, but I didn't get my PS1 until the following year. And I know I've said this many times, and it's like the most well-known Nintendo fact or whatever piece of lore. It's like launching a console with 2 games and then releasing nothing for months.
Long time.
Is fucking insane. Like, it's the antithesis of, and it's how strong Mario 64 itself was in a lot of ways. And I remember very vividly playing N64 it must have been in the summer of 1996 or something like that, like right before it came out in Toys R Us, or maybe it was the fall of 96, something like right around the time we all got ours or whatever. But I needed the PS1 and ultimately got the PS1. And the PS1 was the dominant machine. I played the PS1 probably 80% of the time. And then a big N64 game would come out. And you'd go to the N64 and you'd play Ocarina of Time, or you'd play Perfect Dark, or you'd play GoldenEye. And of course, the N64 was the preeminent multiplayer machine, like you said, of the time. Before, people were playing online at the time on PC, but I wasn't. And so the 4-player stuff was amazing. I mean, GoldenEye was a seminal game for me and my friends. I was in 7th grade when the N64 came out. So like and like we were playing it through the 10th and or 11th grade years, basically until PS2 came out. We also moved on to the Dreamcast in some sense in my circle, for like multiplayer games and fighting games and all that kind of stuff. But you're right that it's like Smash Brothers, GoldenEye, Mario Party, Mario Golf, especially. And Mario Golf was like a huge game with my friends.
Fun, man.
And I loved the GameCube one as well.
Yeah.
Toadstool Tour or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then, and so on and so forth. And then a lot of really strong single player games. Majora's Mask is one of my favorite games of all time. But I also feel like the N64 is a little, I think in hindsight, people are a little rosy on the N64. This is another example of like a machine. More people cared about this machine than the original Xbox when I made that argument. There's no doubt. But it's like, we all kind of knew things were teetering with Nintendo at this point. It seemed weird. When I wrote the history of Naughty Dog, that I was explained to me, and this was a really great thing, that like the three big companies were kind of going in three different directions with 3D games, and no one really knew what the other was doing. So you ended up getting games like Mario 60. The examples like Mario 64, Knights, and Crash, and how those are like the visions at the AAA first party space of, or published space of, how they would approach this new realm of 3D games. And they're three totally different games in the way that they use 3D and work in 3D and all that. And in some sense, Nintendo chose right with Mario 64. Knights is kind of on rails and there's draw distance things and whatever. Mario is like a world, but low texture, kind of inoperability of going wherever you want to go and doing things and playing in the world. And Crash Bandicoot was really about more graphical fidelity and limited 3D space by moving you through environments and not letting you loose. And so you have to kind of give Nintendo credit for discovering the right path in some sense, or the path that would be taken by most. And N64 allowed them to do that. But I just think the N64 is like, the PS1 was demonstrably better than the N64 in every way, except for maybe some of the multiplayer stuff, in my opinion, because there were even better shooters on PS1 ultimately than GoldenEye, so that's my opinion, my long-winded opinion.
I wanted an S. I think
it's for N64.
I think so, dude. We're talking about some of those games, dude. Some of the greatest games of all time, still to this day. WWE No Mercy for multiplayer, Colin. Good shit.
Yeah, the wrestling games were big. That wasn't my. I played those games with my friends, but I never owned those.
Yeah,
we can put it there for now. I mean, I was thinking more like A.
All right, I'm going to put an S. I'm going to put an S. We'll revisit it.
Yeah,
we'll revisit it.
That's fine.
I think the N64 was awesome, though I do agree with the PS1 was better in a lot of ways. All right, Colin, here we go. The NES, the original Nintendo Entertainment System.
You know where it goes.
The GOAT?
Yeah.
Put it on the GOAT?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, is there anything else to say about it?
Video games. It saved video games. It started video games as we know them today.
The NES has the strongest per capita catalog of games in gaming history. Fewer than 1,000 games published, and arguably 50 of them maybe are stone cold classic games. Like, there's no other console
Mario 3 maybe is on there. So
yeah, Mario 3. I mean, dude, just it's like Mega Man 1 through 6, Castlevania 1 through 3, Mario 1 through 3, Zelda 1 and 2. Kid Icarus. You have, and we didn't even get into any like too much. Well, the third party stuff was Castlevania and Mega Man, but there's a fucking million games. Some of them people don't talk about. Some of them are really weird. Like Kickle Cubicle is a fucking sick game. Like there's like so many Adventures of Lolo, Codename Viper, Contra. It goes on and on and on and on for this console, in my opinion. The NES is so legendary. And if you don't get it, I'm sorry, but it's perfect. 2 buttons and a D-pad and so much. And think about the variety of games you get out of that. It's the Dragon Warrior games, the original Final Fantasy, Faxanadu. Dude, there's, I mean, like I said, you could easily rattle off 50 games that would, like, at Metal Gear, although that's a port. DuckTales,
Yeah.
Metal
All those
Storm,
Capcom games.
Journey to Silius, Batman. The fuck out of here. Are you
Yeah, we'll
kidding?
keep.
You know,
It's in the GOAT category. You don't got to convince me.
yeah.
We'll put it in there. It's a
Dude,
stone
I was
cold
obsessed
classic.
with the NES. And I
Yeah.
still in a lot of ways am. I can't imagine anything being my favorite console more than the NES. Um
So good.
I've shed my Nintendo fanboy stuff a lot in my adult life, but I will always fucking bleed that console. It's just,
Yeah. It's that good,
it
man.
was seminal, and maybe it was a time and place thing, but I don't think so. Like I actually
Yeah, I
just
don't
think I
know.
happened to have been at the right time in the right place, but nonetheless, dude, Double Dragon, the TMNT games,
Yeah.
please,
I mean,
please.
it's what got us to fall in love with games.
Mm-hmm.
Most people I know my age and your age, it's the thing, man. It's the one. All
Yeah.
right. Now we're doing the 3DO, which I don't know if I even have ever played a 3DO.
I've only played one 3DO. My sister Dana's roommate for a time, like for a couple of years, he had a 3DO. That was my only um, exposure to it. So I'm not comfortable enough really saying anything about it.
Dude, let's just make a. We'll do not enough XP. We don't have enough experience
Right,
with it.
right. That's good. That'll work. Well, look how nice that is. That's fun.
Oh, wait, 3DO right
It's
here.
right down there.
Not
Yeah.
enough XP.
Yeah, that's fine. That works for me. There's some cool stuff on it. Like I learned a lot about Way of the Warrior, the Naughty Dog game that was on 3DO.
Mm-hmm.
When I wrote their history, and that was probably the deepest I really even gotten to thinking about 3DO. So I'm just not in a space to be able to do it. But I am glad I did have some sort of exposure to it. But
Yeah.
that was the only person I ever knew. I can't even remember his name, to be honest. And what I remember most about that guy was my sister. I used to go to my sister's house on, I don't know what it was, Wednesdays or something, her apartment, and we would watch 90210 and
Nice.
and then we would go on another day and I'd watch Party of Five with her. And so I used to
Wow.
just like,
Party of 5.
yeah. And
Wow.
so I used to be there a couple times a week. We would order like pizza. She was like a teacher. She was in like her early 20s at this time. And and my memory of this roommate, I wish I fucking remembered his name. Was I was like, oh, there's a tape in the VCR I noticed or whatever. And I went and took it out and it was like a porno.
That's
And
funny.
it was like one of his, and she's like, oh no. And so that's why it's not even a 3DO that I remember that guy the most for. It's that me finding his porn.
That's really funny. All right, Colin. Sega Genesis.
Um, no higher than A, I would say, in my opinion, but
Sure. I would say low A.
Low A. Yeah, I mean,
I think the Genesis is great, but
yeah,
it's very inferior to the Super Nintendo.
yeah. There was no competing between those two machines, in my opinion. I was before I even knew what fanboyism or tribalism was. In that sense, I was such a Nintendo fanboy, and I hated the fucking Genesis.
Yeah.
And then as I got older, I came around and I told the story once that I traded my SNES to my friend Jason for his Genesis. My mom made me like called his mom, was like, you guys got to like unwind this, because it was like late in the era. I think we knew Ultra 64 was coming out or whatever, and I was like, all right, I don't really care. And I think he had Shinobi or something, and I was like, oh, this is super cool. And then my mom made me unwind that, which I'm really grateful for. But yeah, Genesis has actually a lot of great games on it, and I have a lot of exposure to it at the time. I got my Genesis late in the Genesis era when they became really cheap, and I actually, started collecting some games for it in high school back in the eBay days when things were like so accessible. It was awesome, and
Right.
and there's some good shit on it. I actually specifically was excited to play Bloodlines like all the way through. At that time, I had rented it at a friend's, but I'd never beaten it at that time. So there was some cool stuff on there. And of course, the Phantasy Star games were deeply interesting to me. Growing up, my friends next door, they were three brothers, and the older brother, they were all into games. And those are the guys that had the Master System. They had a Genesis and an NES. And the oldest brother was a real big RPG fan, and he was probably 6 or 7 years older than me. And I remember he worked at McDonald's and then would spend like all of his money buying games. And he was the one that introduced me to Dragon Warrior, and he was the one that introduced me to Phantasy Star. So, and they had Phantasy Star 1, but that was a Master System game. 2, 3, and 4 were Genesis games. And so there were some really good and the Phantasy Star games are great. It's actually really frustrating that they've never re-released those games in a really super accessible way. They're on like the Genesis Smash Pack shit and stuff like that, but it would be cool to release those games one at a time, put trophies on them and some fast forward functionality. And dude, where is Phantasy Star 5? Like, why wouldn't you have ever done that? Phantasy Star 4 came out in 1995. Very weird. So yeah, I'm fine with Genesis at A. I wouldn't be uncomfortable putting it at B. But a really interesting story behind it too, of just this thing kind of comes out. It does okay, but no one really cares about it. And they just kind of release it again, this time with Sonic.
Right?
Right. Yeah. And it's really a one of a kind for that. Also, and I don't know if this would be in your wheelhouse, but maybe the first console that did sports games very well. And the EA stuff I had all the EA stuff on SNES, like the NHL games and Madden and stuff, but it was well known even at the time that the Genesis versions of those games were better. Mm-hmm. What Genesis lacked because of its 3-button controller, foundational to it was like bad fighting game ports and all that kind of stuff.
I had Street Fighter 2 on it.
Oh, you had to like hit start, right, to like go between. Yeah. Oh my god, it's fucking horrible.
Sucked.
Horrible.
It sucked. Yeah.
Very unintuitive. But yeah. So shout out to the Genesis. It has a nice catalog of games. A lot of cool like mascot 2D platformers on Genesis. Actually, I would say that that's probably the most of where the good stuff in the seams exists. But yeah, shout out to the sports games, some good role-playing games, but it's not the Super Nintendo, and so it's not.
No, not even close. All right, Colin. Now we got
is it Ouya?
Yeah.
Trash. Oh, do we not have a trash category now?
Let me make a new one.
Oh, okay.
Whoops. Trash.
Let's give it a different color too. We need a different color.
I don't know how to change that.
Go to the gear and then you just
what color do you want? Like,
let's do like just
purple?
Something to differentiate. That's fine. Yeah. Oh, look at that. That's nice.
Trash.
Yeah, I hated the Ouya. Garbage.
Nothing good to say about. Towerborn was kind of fun, but
yeah, that was the most notable thing that was on it, and that
was the only thing people cared about.
Yeah, it was. It's an idea. It's. I don't blame people for doing things, and it's like, yeah, that's somewhat of an intuitive idea. This like micro console, Android functionality, deeply, customizable and hackable. And I know people got some cool, and I know that that's like in this era, 10 plus years later, like the Ouyas, or I don't even know if it's possible anymore. Maybe you can't even connect them to the internet or something anymore. But the emulation scene on Ouya, I remember being very strong. But it ultimately didn't pan out. My biggest memory, and I've made fun of this many times over the years, was just being at IGN at the time and just people telling me how stupid I was for not thinking this thing was going to be. Like, I remember being in like one of our stand-up meetings in the morning and being like, who gives a shit about this thing? Like, why are we like writing about this stupid machine? Everyone's like, you don't understand. And these are the same people that were like, mobile gaming is going to kill consoles and all that. So, yeah, sure they are.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not a fuck Ouya. I was going to say fuck Ouya, but it's like whatever. It's just it's an interesting story about kickstarting something and lack of control over the product and heavy investment in game developers and turning them over. I think what was that woman's name that was involved in Journey? Kelly Santiago, right? She like left that game company to go to Ouya, I think. And bad idea.
Bad idea.
Yeah, so
Yikes.
Stupid machine.
Right.
Cheap. Whatever.
Rest in peace. Ouya. All right, Colin. The PS1, I'm putting this up on the GOAT. Do you feel that's appropriate? The PS1.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a vital machine, especially in Japanese role-playing games for me, but lots of other things too. And it was, when you look at sales figures, it's the first truly mass market machine, because the NES, I mean, they're all mass market machines, but you're talking about Atari selling 30 million, NES selling like 60, I think, and SNES selling 50. Genesis kind of in that space too. This is something that sold over 100 million units. So this is something that spread the field twice over, and you can't hate on that. And was the first machine to break 100 million units outside of Game Boy, of course, but that is a handheld.
Yeah, first console.
So yeah. I have no problem with this at all. I think it's got something for everyone, and
Yeah.
some really truly special games that you can rattle off. Pretty like the NES, although not to the extent because there was more shovelware and just more games generally available on it. Has a very strong per capita presence of all time games. So
Yeah. All 3 Resident Evils on there, man.
mhm.
3 Final Fantasy games.
Right.
Like Final Fantasy 7, of course. All those like Final Fantasy tags, all those JRPGs, all the Square stuff was killer back then. So much good shit. Crash Bandicoot, like you said, something for everyone.
Mhm.
High quality games.
Yeah, Metal
Chris's
Gear
beloved Ape
Solids.
Escape, Metal Gear
Yep,
Solid,
Ape Escape, Spyro. Yeah,
Symphony
like
of the Night.
you're absolutely right. It's. I mean, I felt like I was playing a new role playing game every month ish
Yeah.
for 4 or 5 years,
Yeah.
especially once things were a little slow in the beginning because there was like it's like Beyond the Beyond, which was horrible,
Mhm.
and
There's Twisted Metal, right? Was that a launch game?
Twisted Metal was a launch game, yeah. But I was saying, as far as JRPGs are concerned, like
Oh,
Kingsfield, the first one never even came out here, I don't think.
no.
But
We
that was
got
like a
2.
launch game in Japan. So there was like some Western role playing game stuff that I would have never even paid attention to. It wasn't until PS2 that I even started playing non-Japanese role playing games with
Hmm.
games like Summoner and stuff like that, because that's what was available at the time at launch. But it, I think beginning with Wild Arms, that was spring 97. And then you get into fall 97, which is Final Fantasy 7 into Symphony of the Night. Then you get into like Final Fantasy Tactics. Saga Frontier, I think, came out right after that, which I wasn't super into. Then like into Breath of Fire 3, fucking Azure Dreams, into like Tales of Destiny, into Xenogears,
Mhm.
into Parasite Eve, into Brave Fencer Musashi. Like I still remember this sequence of games because it was kind of like insane. And
Yeah.
then you get years beyond. It's like, okay, now we're into like Legend of Legaia, Thousand Arms, Wild Arms 2. Um, and there was stuff that I wasn't really even aware of or that I would rent that I didn't realize, like the Persona games,
Mhm.
right, were present. Um, it was just something. Japanese role playing games were coming out constantly, and a lot of them were pretty good. And Vagrant Story, and there's a lot of shit. Like you
Yeah.
said, the Square Enix stuff. I mean, you can't, or Square Soft at the time stuff. You can, and the Enix stuff. Dragon Warrior 7,
Mhm.
right, is one of those games. So good shit, dude. I mean,
Yeah.
just from that
Nah.
genre alone.
Yeah, just
Then
from that genre alone.
then you have everything else, like the Twisted
Tony
Metals, Metal
Hawk.
Gear Solid, Warhawk, yeah. Um, and later on, I mean, I think a really seminal late PS1 game is Medal of Honor.
Mhm.
Um, so there's good, and Parappa the Rapper and the Tomb Raider games, and there's
Yeah. It's just crazy, man. It's an
yeah,
insane library.
yeah, Legacy of
Fucking
Kain.
yeah.
I mean, yeah, the first 2 GTAs are on there. Like a lot of interesting stuff. So yeah, I have
Siphon
no problem with that.
Filter, it's just like crazy
Yeah,
shit.
Siphon Filter, right? Exactly. Yeah, just you can just really rattle this stuff off, and a lot of it was pretty good. Some of it was pretty bad, but
Mhm.
a lot of it was pretty good. And I had a really good PS1 library. I was really, really, especially because I was also copying PS1 games at the time. So like, if you include those,
Yeah.
I had everything basically. I used to just conspicuously just go rent as many games as I could and just copy it.
Mhm.
You know,
Some
so
Mega Man games on there.
yeah, Legends,
X4, my favorite.
yeah, X4,
Legends.
X5, and X6, right?
I think it's
Legends,
X6, yeah.
Mega Man 8,
8, yeah.
um, yeah, Tron Bon,
Mhm. Lots of Mega Man on there.
yeah, yeah, good shit, good
All
shit.
right. Let's do our beloved Dreamcast. How are we feeling about the Dreamcast? Died a sad early death.
This is an A machine, I would say at the very least. I loved the Dreamcast, and
I love the Dreamcast as well.
there was something alluring about it. This was an era 9999. Everyone remembers that, but this was an era. So that was 10th grade for me, and it was an era where I had some capital. I had like my little job. I worked at like a stable over the summers.
Mhm.
I made like $25 a day or something like that, and shoveling poop and just like moving horses around, just doing whatever. And so I had like a little bit of capital to work with, and I was really excited about the Dreamcast because it was like, oh, I can kind of like try something new. It's not safe. And I also had kind of an inside sight into it because my brother's best friend PJ who was a huge, and it still is a huge games nerd, would often import things from Japan, and he imported a Dreamcast. So we were playing it that summer, and I was like, this thing is fucking sick. And I couldn't wait to buy it. And the reality is that there were a lot of really cool experiences on the Dreamcast. The two things that I loved on it are things that I don't really play anymore, though. The first is sports. The sports games on Dreamcast were really good. And especially, I have very fond memories of NBA 2K, that edition of it, and I think the guy on the Sixers named Allen Iverson, I want to say, was on the cover.
Yeah.
And that was the first time I played sports games online over my phone line. And I was like, this is crazy. Like, if you had a keyboard, like the Dreamcast keyboard, you can even type into the bottom of the screen.
Yeah, PSO. Yeah.
Right. And of course, Phantasy Star Online is the most seminal of those games. So there was that. And then the other thing was like just the fighting games on Dreamcast were fucking crazy. I mean, there were so many like fighting games versions. On there. Yes. Yeah. And of course, Marvel vs. Capcom 2 obviously is again one of those seminal products, but I would also say something like Power Stone is in that conversation. Soul Calibur was certainly Soul in Calibur. That
such a
conversation.
Good game, dude.
Now, Soul Calibur 2 on GameCube specifically, because that had Link in it, was also a really great game, but it all kind of started there. And then there were like the weird Sega shit in there, like Crazy Taxi and Crazy Taxi 2 were awesome games. And you had Code Veronica, right, on Resident Evil or on Dreamcast. There were things to play. And I remember the last Dreamcast game I bought was actually the Sega Smash Pack. And I remember it being called Sega Smash Pack Volume 1, but they never, I don't think, did any more of them because Dreamcast was canceled that spring or discontinued. And so I did put my money where my mouth was on that. But I remember the $9.99 ad campaign very well. Like, it was all over MTV at the time. And it seemed like maybe they were going to do it. But the unraveling of it was just how easy it was to pirate on it. And you didn't have to do anything to the console to play copied games. That was like the funniest part about it. It just worked. Yeah. And so there was like major fundamental issues with it. And they knew the PS2 was going to kill it. And the PS2 did. I mean, it was only on the market concurrent to PS2 for 6 months before they discontinued it. I think a lot of people were just waiting. And that was probably wise. The Saturn was pretty bad and very expensive. And so I think it put a lot of people off. But that happened to have been like funny enough for me, like the best time I ever had with a Sega product. So yeah. That's what I feel about the Dreamcast anyway.
Yeah, I think it's my favorite Sega console that I haven't really messed with the Saturn, so I can't say, but I did like the Dreamcast a lot. Good arcade ports, like you said. House of the Dead 2, really fun on there.
Isn't Typing awesome of the Dead also on Dreamcast? Like there's some.
I want to say it is. Yeah.
There's some interesting. You're right. Like some of the light gun stuff. The controller in the VMU was also very unique. PS1 was messing with that stuff a little bit too, but yeah, shout out to them. I mean, it's a sad story. PlayStation destroyed them. I mean, they really Sony destroyed Sega. Nintendo had nothing to do with that. And it's pretty crazy how things turned out.
Yeah. All right, another Sega product, the Master System.
B or C, I would say. C? Yeah, it does some cool stuff, but yeah, I mean, it's fine. There's some cool stuff. Alex Kidd's on there. Afterburner was actually a really cool game, which I think was bundled in with it for a while. The original Phantasy Star, but I've known a couple of Master System evangelicals in my life. Specifically, a guy I used to work with, Levi, at IGN, who did our retro coverage there for many years. He loved the Master System. But I was talking about those three brothers earlier, and that was my only other exposure to the Master System. And we did play it somewhat often, but the NES was just it just seemed like this like bootleg sort of thing to me.
Yeah. I will say I didn't even know the Master System existed until a very long time after the NES era. Because no one I knew had it. No one talked about it ever. I don't think people I knew around me knew that it existed. It was just like an irrelevant product. But I'm a little younger than you, so I don't know. Just no one I knew about it at all.
It had no one except for, like, as I remember, I don't remember being in the trenches, I guess, that being that young, but it's like, I don't remember it being relevant to anyone, even the person who had it that I knew, Tim. So, yeah, I'm sure somewhere in some recess somewhere in the
Yeah.
United States where people fucking going crazy about Alex Kidd or something. But I just, yeah. And it only sold like 8 or 10 million units. So it's not like it was like widely around and people were playing it. But yeah, I just remember that I used to sleep over their house all the time, and I used to sleep in his room. And he had like a television rack, and I just remember that red. It looked very futuristic. There were like, and Genesis was the same actually, where it had like some knobs and things on it, and it had a slot for like cards and like a cartridge slot of some sort. It definitely felt more futuristic than the NES. And the NES is very old. When the NES's innards are from the Famicom, it's 1983, so it didn't take much to. It was what they did with the NES though. When you compare like Ice Climbers to Mega Man 6, it's like, damn, dude. Like, how did you figure this out so extensively? It's crazy.
It is crazy. All right, Sega Saturn. Like I said, I haven't played this really, but there's a lot of games on here that I would like to play, like all the Shining Force games and a bunch of RPGs actually that I want to play. There's some shoot 'em ups on there, but I don't really have any experience with it. What about you?
So my first experience with Saturn was my brother's. It always goes to my brother. My brother's roommate Ducky, who he lived with in Philadelphia for some years, and he was a huge gaming nerd. This guy, he was older than Dagan, and he had like everything. I don't even really know what he did for a living. Dagan would know, but he had like everything. And when I would go to their apartment, I would get so amped because it was like going to a toy store for me. I was like 12 or whatever, and or 10 or 11 or 12. I mean, it was before Saturn even came out, so I was young, and then Saturn came out, all these different things, and I would always be. Dagan tells a story about how when the original Wild Arms came out, like the guy would let him borrow games, but he didn't want Dagan to beat the games first, so he would hide games from him, and then Dagan figured out where he hid Wild Arms and beat it before him, and they had like a fight over it or something. It's really funny.
That's so funny.
So he had Saturn, and I remember specifically playing Panzer Dragoon Saga at their house. And,
okay.
And I was like, wow, this is really cool. Like it sounded more like an RPG than it really was, and it's its own kind of unique. It's actually a very unique like and it continued with like what Orta or whatever on Xbox, this different kind of idea. And there was like Knights. And actually one of the things that I think is underrated about the Saturn is that there were a lot of games that were coming to PS1 were often coming to Saturn in the mid 90s, 90s era, 96, 97. So your Tomb Raiders and your Symphony of the Night is on Saturn, and Resident Evil, right? And to that point, it had a pretty strong catalog of fighting games on it as well.
Yeah.
But
yeah, it does.
I never had my own and my access to my own until later on. And I don't think Dagan did either. And I told the story about how there was a place in New Hampshire when I lived there, when I was going to a Catholic school there, called Game Exchange, where you could actually rent time, which is like a mom and pop store, but you could like rent time there and just like sit at a TV with a console of your choice and just play things. And I used to often do that with the Saturn because I owned an N64 and a PS1, but not a Saturn. So I have some experience with it, but I never was like fond of it. Very similar to a few other consoles. I did feel like it was a subpar experience, but a lot of it might have just been funneled through the death spiral that things like that are in. Like you knew from the go, even as a kid in middle school, just reading websites and stuff, it's like, man, this thing's fucked. You know?
Yeah.
And so maybe that kind of rubbed off on me. I also, again, wasn't a Sega person. I got over it with the Dreamcast. But so yeah, I'm happy putting the Saturn at C. I mean, it's the
okay.
Maybe B if you have the Master System at C. It's kind of a cop out, but yeah, C is probably fine.
What about low B?
Low B
on the B.
Yeah, that's okay. I can deal with that.
All right. Now, time for the Game Boy, the original Game Boy.
This is like an S tier probably machine to me because I think not to skip ahead, but it's like the DS is probably the GOAT tier Game Boy or Nintendo handheld. So I don't want to do both of them. The original Game Boy is awesome. I mean, I had one from very early on, and there are a lot of great games on it. But it is a little bit of a budget machine. They did kind of just ride it out. They did a lot of cool stuff with it later in the late 90s with it. Game Boy Pocket was really cool, especially I remember, and I was so excited to get one because it was so sharp. Like you didn't even feel like you needed the backlighting or anything. Just that sharpness in image really helped the visibility issue because it wasn't so green scale anymore. And then, of course, Game Boy Color was pretty cool too, and releasing games that only worked on Game Boy Color. And there was like a kind of a late burst of Game Boy support that I thought was really interesting, especially in hindsight. So the machine was really relevant for 12 years or so.
Long time.
And that's a really long time, especially because it was an underpowered NES when it came out during the NES era. So like midway through the NES era. So it's a really amazing thing. I really do love the Mega Man games on, not surprisingly, but I think the Mega Man games translate really well here. But I also have a soft spot for the Castlevania games. I really loved the Final Fantasy Legends games and
Legends, yeah,
and Adventure too. They released all of those in those colorful boxes, like re-released them late in the generation. There was like this whole vision of Game Boy that was seen, and then, like I said, kind of went away and then kind of resurged as they got things going on it again. And then with the Game Boy Pocket and all that stuff, you had like the Game Boy camera and the Game Boy printer and all of these weird things. I remember going to EB Games and like playing with the Game Boy printer. They would have it like the desk, and you could like print out your picture with it and stuff like that. And late in the generation, I wasn't actually a huge fan of Link's Awakening. I thought it was very strange, and I thought it was very obtuse as well. It annoyed the shit out of me as a kid. But I did love those Capcom Zelda games that came out. Oracle of Ages and Oracle of Seasons. I thought that those games were fucking sick. And there are some really good things on there. So S tier. I mean, and it's the first handheld of note, really. You know.
Yeah, we'll just count Game Boy Color as a part of this as well, just because there's no Game Boy Color actually on this list.
Yeah, I would say that whole generation is Game Boy, Game Boy Pocket, Game Boy Color are all the same to me. You know?
And like Pokemon, Juggernaut.
Of course, I didn't even bring Pokemon up. Yeah, so of course, you know, red and blue. Yes. I guess green in Japan, but red and blue, and then gold and silver. And
yellow, gold, silver.
Platinum was on GBA, right?
Yeah, that was GBA time, I believe.
Yeah, really good shit. Good shit. That whole run of I loved the Game Boy Advance too, but I wouldn't argue. I think the Game Boy Advance is actually a fucking sick machine, but I wouldn't argue that it's as important. You know,
no, it's not as important.
Yeah.
All right. Xbox One. I think this console had a pretty decent start with some of its software, like Sunset Overdrive, but I can't really think of too many like bangers off the top of my head for this.
I barely played Xbox One. I think people are going to think that I'm going to be mean about it, so I don't know too much about it apart from just its poor sales trajectory, and it didn't have very many games on it that were of note that I haven't played. I guess the biggest games that I think were on Xbox One, especially the first of these games, that would be the biggest gap in my Xbox knowledge, are the Ori games. But I kind of feel like those inevitably have to be coming to PlayStation if they're going to start releasing stuff there. So
sure.
So I don't know that I even want to. I'll defer to you on the Xbox One. You certainly know much more about it than I do. Cuphead,
Nier Automata, I remember. Tomb Raider. I'm trying to think of really good, awesome Xbox One only games though.
Well, Nier wasn't on Xbox only, was it? Is that what you just said?
Automata was, or it came to it later. It wasn't at launch. Titanfall 1 and 2, or 1 was Xbox only.
Yeah, I don't think Nier was. Everything. I think Nier was everything.
A Nier Automata?
Yeah. Is it Automata maybe. Or is it Automata?
It might be Automata. I've heard both. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Nier came to PS4 first, and then Xbox One second.
Yeah. Okay.
PS4 in 2017, Xbox One in 2018.
Like I'm looking at this list of the best Xbox One games, and they're all multi-plat pretty much. Like what was Halo Reach on? Was that Xbox One?
I thought Reach was on Xbox 360.
Oh shit! Yeah. Fuck man, Xbox One kind of does.
Yeah,
suck.
Halo Reach is 2010, so that's 360.
Man, yeah. Oh, and they had like Halo 4 and 5, which were.
I guess like Quantum Break was on there.
Quantum Break,
Recoil.
Not great.
They had some exclusivity with that game, Tacoma.
They did have. Oh, that was 360. Never mind. I don't know, man. The Xbox One, I guess wasn't really that sick. I don't think it really was when I think about it.
I mean, as I understand it, people are. I mean, I'm sure it has its fans, but I think even the consensus amongst Xbox fans is that it was
Yeah, I don't.
It was not great. But I don't know.
What about
I'll defer to you.
high C for now?
Okay.
High C for now. All right, next Virtual Boy, straight in the
Trash.
trash.
Yeah, I don't even.
Straight in the trash.
Really
Don't even
bad.
talk about it.
I never owned one. It's one of those things along with Jaguar where I wish that I was smart enough to see those things in KB Toys for like $20, literally.
I know.
Like a pyramid of them, you know? Like, please take the Atari Jaguars. Please take the Virtual Boys. And I was just, and no one really knew at the time, I guess. It's like, I would have bought all of these. I saw fucking NES's, dog bone controller top loaders in Toys R Us in 95 maybe. And I remember it was like a little pyramid of them for $50. It's like, Jesus fucking Christ. You would have made, if you bought all of those at the time and just put them away and then brought them out now, you would make tens of thousands of dollars. I don't, so that's like my biggest memory of the fucking Virtual Boy. I played it in the store. I probably shouldn't have been because everyone's eyes was all over it. And I played it since we had one at IGN actually. So I did play it somewhat. I don't want to say extensively, but I played a few games on it there. It's fucking garbage.
Yeah. I played it at Toys R Us and I was like, this is so bad. Horrible. So strange. What a blunder by Nintendo.
Yeah, it's interesting.
All right. This is the PC, Colin. We don't even have to do this, but I would just put the PC as
I think that's obvious. A GOAT level platform going all the way back to the 70s.
Yeah.
So it's indisputable.
Fucking amazing. Yeah. All right, here we go. The Wii U. Now, I think there's some good games on here. However, pretty much everything that was great on there made its way to Switch. Pretty much everything. There's a couple examples. I think the hardware sucked ass. I hate the Wii U hardware so much. The gamepad was shit. My gamepad, I have to keep plugged in at all times to play it, or it just dies immediately. It felt bizarrely low quality for a Nintendo product, in my opinion. Like, it's cool you could play Wii on it, but
right. Well, the audience didn't connect with it either. Most of my experience with the Wii U came very early on in its life, and even before it came out, when we finally started getting them to review games and all that. And I think the first game I reviewed on it was the Mass Effect 3 port. Remember, they just randomly ported Mass Effect 3, but none of the other ones to Wii U.
Batman, Arkham City, or whatever like that. Also,
and the big thing for me, dude, was the whole face buttons below the stick thing. It was. I couldn't get over how unintuitive that was in some sense. I was like, I can't believe that this is like just being different for being different. This is not the direction that these controllers will go in on the other two controllers. Like, why are you doing this? And I think that really worked against it for me in that game, Mass Effect 3. And then later when I had to review some ports, whatever, I'm like, this is really distracting as fuck. It's very similar to Micah rolls her eyes at me, and I, reasonably so, but I'm like, do you realize that when you turn on the Switch and you go to like the NES Classics or whatever, that they all have wrong controls? Do you not know that? Like that they're just they intuitively so none of them have the right controls. How is that possible? That no one cares about that. They're backwards to the point where you have to go on the Switch system level controls and remap everything in order to make it work. And she's like, you're crazy. And I'm like, I'm not fucking crazy. There's a certain way games work. This is where the A button is. This is where the B button is. B is to shoot and fight and all that. A is to jump. You have these certain rhythms and then you just reverse them. Yeah. I'll always remember that about that controller.
Yeah, it's fucked up.
It's very weird. And it did feel cheap. It was a Fisher. I said at the time, it's like, it feels like a Fisher Price toy. It's just, but they were right, weren't they, about where this was all going? And
like the second screen.
Yeah. And
handheld stuff. Yeah.
There's something genetic about the Wii U you can't deny that ended up in what will become the best selling piece of gaming hardware ever. In the Switch in another year or year and a half. I mean, it's going to pass PS2 and Game Boy. And so you have to show it a little appreciation for that. And so I think, a C is appropriate. I wouldn't trash it.
No, definitely not trash it. Right, There's some great games on there, but like I said, the Switch took pretty much all those games and just put ports of them on there. Except Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, which still annoys the shit out of me.
What was the game that I played most on Wii U? I have to think. I guess it would be... when I worked in journalism, we would often leave games running so people can play the game. Like, if you were a Nintendo person, it would be like, we would have these things where it's like, these are kind of the games you should familiarize yourself with and kind of just fuck around and take a day or take a 2 days and just play. There's actually a picture of me playing it. I have to pull it up at some point. The Donkey Kong game, Frozen. What was it?
A Tropical Freeze.
Tropical Freeze. Yeah.
Holy shit! God tier game.
And I was like, yeah, there's actually a picture of me, and I remember it circulating at the time because we published it in some context, and it was like me laughing playing it.
Yeah,
like enjoying myself, and
it's so good, dude.
But that was probably the game I played the most. So I don't have an incredible amount of experience with it.
It's one of the best platformers ever, Colin, in my opinion. God tier game.
That's retro,
but
right?
Yeah, even like what'd you say? Yeah,
that's retro. Yeah, retro.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Even though like the gamepad gimmick when they try to incorporate it into gameplay usually wasn't very good, in my opinion. Like it was all right in that game Zombie U. I remember people liked in that. But Star Fox Zero is like an infamous example of how it was not good, of them forcing you using the gamepad into the game and just ruining it almost. So I don't know. Big misstep for Nintendo. Huge. But some good games. All right. Super Nintendo.
See, this is why I have a problem with the N64 being an S tier, because I would consider this the S tier Nintendo console and the N64 like the A tier. Now we can worry about that later, or an A tier because we have.
You just put it a higher S.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, I think it goes. I don't think it's a GOAT level console. Some people do think it is, but S tier I think is very appropriate for.
Do you think it's better than the PS3?
No, probably not. But
okay.
But I think that I think it deserves its accolades. I mean, I loved the SNES, and that was the first console that came out that I had from the very beginning, and cognizantly had it, and like not like just being a fucking kid around it like a little baby, like with my brother, but
yeah,
owning it, remembering getting the games, remembering a lot of really obscure shit about it too. I got the Super Scope 6 for Christmas one year, and I just hated using it. So I just ended up making it into like an outside toy that I would use like to play guns with my friends or like in the woods or whatever, like my little rocket launcher kind of thing. And
yeah.
But I remember getting Link to the Past for Christmas, and that game was paradigm shifting game for me. And I really, really, really loved that game. And also the journey through role-playing games as well. I mean, there were a lot of really early stuff on there that was cool. There was like an R-Type game that I really loved. ActRaiser from Enix was like an early SNES game that I really, really loved. The original Pilot Wings was actually a game that we really loved. But a lot of my maturation with role-playing games kind of coming out of the NES era and still playing NES. I was still buying NES games until 1995, I guess is probably when I bought my last NES game. I mean, Mega Man 6 came out in 94. And I bought the shit out of that. So it was funny, like we were years into the SNES era at that point. So I was bouncing back and forth between the consoles in some sense, but the SNES had a few advantages for me. First of all, I really started to love sports games on SNES and would often, as I said earlier, play them on Genesis at my friend's house and then buy the port for SNES, which were usually not as good, but I bought the NHL game. I had NHL 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, I want to say, even for SNES, and Madden and all of those. The Mega Man X games were seminal. X 1, 2, and 3. Those were amazing games. Wasn't crazy about Mega Man 7 even at the time, but it was there as well. There was some Castlevania love, although seldom on, Super Castlevania specifically, but there were others on SNES. But a lot of the role-playing games and Final Fantasy 4, we knew it as 2, of course, and Final Fantasy 6, which we knew as 3. Final Fantasy 2 is still one of my favorite, or 4 is one of my favorite games of all time, and it still holds up because I just beat it again last year. And 6 is, I think, one of the great role-playing games of all time, but there's a lot of other stuff in the seams too. Secret of Evermore,
Secret of Mana,
Secret of Mana, Chrono Trigger, Secret of Evermore, Robo Trek. There's like a lot of Illusion of Gaia.
ActRaiser, you love?
Yeah, ActRaiser is the ActRaiser 2, not so much, but ActRaiser 1, and then a lot of good fighting game ports on the. I remember Dagan. Right, Street Fighter 2. Dagan went into New York City to buy Street Fighter 2. I remember at some store, and we paid like $90 for it.
Yeah,
and it we must have played that game for like 1,000 hours. I mean, I don't even know how much we play. And then buying Street Fighter 2 Turbo, Street Fighter 2 New Challengers, and so on and so forth. There's also a TMNT fighter that I really liked on there. What was it called? Tournament Fighters.
Oh, yeah.
Which I thought was pretty fun. But there was like some percolating different fighting stuff going on there. There were also some like the beginnings of some PC porting going on SNES with some earlier stuff.
Yeah, I had Doom.
Right. So
had a red cart. It was sick.
And there were some cool licensed games on there as well.
Oh,
I remember really liking Maximum Carnage and a few others. So got to give a shout out to SNES. It's the SNES. The PS1 was kind of the encapsulation of what the SNES started to do, where you would get the SNES has Breath of Fire 2, the Lufia games, so on and so forth, but not quite the volume that PS1 had, but certainly the quality. And a lot of that stuff kind of started there, and then kind of ended up. The PS1 kind of took that banner, that mantle.
Super Mario RPG, man.
Yeah, sure.
So much good shit. All right, 3DS, Colin.
I wasn't crazy about the 3DS.
Okay.
I don't know. How do you feel about it? I thought the gimmick was weak, and in my opinion, and I wasn't crazy about the library. What do you think?
I think the 3DS is great. I would put the DS higher, but I think the 3DS is great. I would put the 3DS at least in A. At least.
Interesting.
Let me read you some games on here. Legend of Zelda: Link Between Worlds, Ocarina of Time, Metroid: Samus Returns Remake, Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate, Kid Icarus Uprising, Mario Kart 7, Pokemon Sun and Moon, Majora's Mask, New Super Mario Bros., Bravely Default, Super Smash Bros., Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon, Pokemon XY, Shovel Knight, Shin Megami Tensei 4.
Yeah, man, many of those games are available elsewhere, though.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I won't argue about this because I know people feel more passionately about it than I do. I was totally over Nintendo by this point, so
yeah, you're out.
I had a lot more passion for the Vita than I did for.
Sure.
But yeah, it was fine.
Cool? What about a lower A then?
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, I'm fine. I'm comfortable with that. It's got to be we have to compromise.
Okay. All right, dude. The Switch.
Yeah, should we do the Switch? Because the other active consoles are not on here. So
they're not on.
Should we remove the Switch? You think? Are we allowed to do that?
We can just put it here for now.
Okay,
because it's not over.
Yeah, not enough
yet.
XP. Yeah.
Game Boy Advance. Pretty sick.
Yeah, I mean, really sick.
S tier?
Yeah, yeah. I think the Game Boy Advance.
Yeah.
For only being alive for 4 years, really, before it was. I don't know what the fuck they were thinking about trying to like do two handhelds at the same time. It didn't make any sense, but people were still buying Game Boy Advance games. I probably bought my last Game Boy Advance game in 2007 or so because you could play them on the DS, but for as short the amount of time that it was really relevant, 3.5 years or so, pretty strong catalog of games and a lot of really, really nice ports as well. Like it's a great machine to play some role-playing games on. I would still say it may be the best way to play like the old Final Fantasy games, for instance. Even better than, as long as you don't care about the quality of life stuff like the fucking bestiaries and speeding time up and stuff like that. Those are the 4, 5, and 6 ports on GBA are sick.
Yeah,
those are really, really wonderful ports. Just as an example, but I really, really liked the Castlevania games and so on and so forth. And from the very beginning, I bought the Arctic White one the day it came out, and there was just something really special and appealing about it. All it was missing was the backlight. And once we got the backlight in 2003 with the clamshell, I feel like it really became exactly what it was supposed to be. It was sad to see it go, but I didn't really miss it because everything was just so the GBA port on the DS was everything. It was just so convenient, and then you really couldn't complain about it. It's like complaining about going from PS4 to PS5 or something. It's like, well, what does it really matter? I mean, you can just play the old stuff, and now we get the new stuff too. So they took advantage of that in a major way, and they deserve credit for that. The GBA, when you think about it though, Brad, isn't it so quaint too? They stuck with 2 face buttons, for instance, on 2 triggers, but they were it was a really simplified and streamlined machine. For some reason, they didn't think to do more with it, and I don't think they really needed to. It's a really, really I love the GBA. So I think an S tier is appropriate. No lower than an A tier though. I mean, if we want to, we could maybe do like a high A even, but I really leave it up to you.
I think we should put an S tier, man.
Okay.
The GBA is awesome. Fucking great handheld, man. I had so much fun with the GBA. Okay, the Wii, Colin. This was your final like Nintendo console, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I would put it maybe like a B. I don't think it's like a washout console. It is certainly a very culturally relevant, highly marketable, big selling console that influenced a great deal. But I don't think it proved itself. I think that the
Right.
the attach rate was poor. The cultural relevance of it really faded. I don't remember
It did.
exactly what the numbers were, but I want to say Uncharted 3 outsold Skyward Sword. They were released around the same time. It's like that's
Yeah.
just weird, not only from a install base perspective or an install base perspective, but also just from a cultural relevance. It's just weird to think that something like Zelda was. It wasn't that it was irrelevant. It's just like I remember when that game came out, and it's like no one really. It didn't feel like it did with Ocarina or even Twilight
No, it didn't.
Princess,
No.
and certainly by the time you get to Breath of the Wild later on. So it was kind of like a low point for some of its IP, but I also feel like it was a really strong point. We just talked about in some context Super Mario Galaxy recently on one of the shows, and
Galaxy 1 and 2.
I love those games, especially the
Yeah.
first one. Like I think the first game was that was my first game of the year voted IGN that I was allowed to vote in was for Super Mario Galaxy. That game was just absolutely extraordinary, and there's a lot of good shit on there, especially early on when there was a lot of third party support. I mean, not all of it worked out. Like I know Red Steel was a cool idea; people weren't wild about it. Zack and Wiki was kind of
oh my god, I loved Zack and Wiki.
It was really cool. I found it really difficult, but I loved the characters in it and all the rest. I thought that there were really unique things. I was talking about it recently because I know that they released a sequel for some reason, which I thought was hysterical. But Endless Ocean was a game that I really liked that game. I was like, that's classic Nintendo in my opinion. It's like, what the fuck is this? You know? So there's a lot to like about the Wii, but is there any other console that followed a similar trajectory where though it was Wii U came out, what, 2012, right?
Yeah, or like 13,
13,
maybe.
something like that.
Something like that. Yeah.
So the Wii was really in existence from 2006, fall 2006, up to that point as like the seminal Nintendo machine, but really only had any sort of cultural cachet for the first half of that, I would say, and maybe even the first third of it. And then it kind of just languished. They were impossible to find, remember, for 2 years.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I remember seeing my first one. I got mine from my friend that worked at Nintendo, actually. And he got it at the employee store, and I paid him for it because I couldn't find one anywhere. And that was probably in early 2007. And the first time I saw one in a store was at Target. There was one left on the shelf, and I just bought it. Just because I was like, someone's going to need this, right? Not to scalp it. I ended up giving it to my brother. And then it went to like kind of a joke by the end. And I don't know what that was all about, really. I mean, I think there's a lot to it because there's some really positive things that we did. I loved the virtual console support.
My God.
I loved, though it was frustrating for people, how they trickled games out. I was like, that's exactly what you should do. That's why I get frustrated when people are like, where are the fucking PlayStation Classics? I'm like, dude, they're not. Why would you want them to release everything at once? That's such stupid marketing. Like, just slowly work on it and trickle them out. And I thought that the like 2 games a week they did for years or so was like awesome. I was always so excited for that press release to pop up to see like what random ass shit. A lot of stuff being ported for the first time, some stuff from random machines. I do believe they had TurboGrafx stuff on there, right?
Yeah,
and
they did. Yeah.
It was like, this is really cool. They're like emulating stuff. And I thought WiiWare was interesting too. There was some cool stuff on there, but the problem is that everything was lost. It's like tied to your console. It's not all the way. It's not up to snuff with its contemporaries. When you think about a machine like the Wii that came out a year after Xbox 360, and you think about how Xbox 360 deals with usernames and purchase content and all of that, and the Wii stuff's just lost forever, unless you just keep it on that console. So though they were like searching out and doing cool stuff, I feel like it ultimately didn't pan out, because it's like a lost generation in some sense of things that you bought, things that you experienced. I don't know. The motion control stuff was a turnoff for a lot of people, and me too. But it wasn't just that. There was something about the way Nintendo felt at that time that was not. It was weird because the DS was killing, and I remained an acolyte of the DS for many years after that. But not the Wii.
Not the Wii. Yeah, weird time in gaming. I had a lot of fun on it. played some sick games, but yeah. It's also like the last time I got good menu music from Nintendo on their
Yeah,
consoles.
love that. Love the virtual
Yeah.
console song and it's good stuff, man.
Yeah. Bring the virtual console back. Let me buy the games, please. Something wrong with renting them, but let me buy them too.
I will say though, just real quick, like I've gone to bat for it before, but I think that Nintendo Online subscription is like the most valuable per dollar.
It's a great deal. Yeah. It's a good deal.
It's like when you look at the games you have access to, it's like, holy shit. If you didn't come from that era or those eras of games and you wanted to just take a year of your life and experience them, and it's like what, $70 or something. It's like, it's fucking amazing. You know,
played some of the greatest games ever on there. All right, PS4.
I would say, I mean, I would look at it as an S rank console personally, but it's I don't know.
No, I think so.
Yeah,
I think that's fair. I think S rank's totally fair. Do you like it more than PS3? No?
Maybe. I don't know.
Maybe, huh?
The problem is that they can't talk to each other, you know?
Right.
Imagine a PS4 to PS5 scenario where the PS4 really worked with the PS3. I think that would be a materially different story in some sense, because then you would have a very similar thing to what I was describing with GBA to DS, where there's no reason to complain about this because you can just play those games. But with this, you kind of it's not that you had to make a choice. You have both machines, but it's not elegant. It kind of moved on, and they had to. The cell processor was a mess, and the way we know that it's so complicated to this day that they're still unwinding all of it to try to get these games natively onto PS4 and PS5 as classics. It's not trivial, you know. And a lot of it has to do, I have it on good authority, and I've talked about it in the past, that like they do have some games running and that you have to go in game by game, and it's like a lot of work because everyone kind of used it differently and approached things differently, as opposed to having more of a standard to how you extract power out of the machine and all the rest. So that's the one thing that I think holds both of the machines back from being like this. Like one of them would be the S tier console, probably the PS4, but or the GOAT tier console rather, in some sense, because it's like, damn, dude, now you're talking about everything on PS3 and everything on PS4. It's like, come on, man. That's the one thing that I think injures it. And what I think will set the PS5 is a vastly underrated machine. I am people are so down on the PS5 for some reason, and I don't get it. And
I don't know why either.
Because it's everything the PS4 was plus what the PS5 is. It's like, what are we complaining about? And then when the PS6 comes out, it's going to be like everything the PS4 was and everything the PS5 was and everything the PS6 was. And at that point, they'll probably have shit ton of PS1 and PS2 classics and PS3 shit working on there. Maybe they have PSP stuff working. Maybe they'll even get Vita stuff working. Come on. So yeah, I'm totally comfortable having it in the S tier. And I think the PS4 is a surprising machine for a lot of people. I don't think anyone expected that it would outsell the PS1, that it would outselling the PS3, I think is going to be somewhat trivial for any PlayStation hardware. But yeah, what do you think about this?
No, I think PS4 is great. Awesome console, dude. I had so much fun on PlayStation 4. And it's the only way to play Bloodborne still. So that gives it some extra value in my book. Can't play it on PS4. Well, you can, but it's like the native version, I guess. PS4 only.
What do they do? You know, now I'm starting to get into the frame of mind of are they going to do a 10th anniversary Bloodborne thing?
It's either that or a PS6 game. That's all I can think of. PS6 launch game, like they did with Demon Souls for 5.
I mean, that would be a crazy disciplined move in some sense, don't you think? If that was the case, where it's like, we know that this game matters to people. Like, this will move hardware. People, for some reason, just care. Let's not blow our load, as it were.
Yeah.
If I might be so perverted.
Hell of a game. I don't know. Yeah, Sony's a weird company. All right, Colin, your beloved PS Vita. You want that in the GOAT tier?
No, I wouldn't put it in the GOAT tier. I mean, I think
S tier?
I would even think like, A or S, I would think. I mean, I love the Vita. I do think that there's some the Vita never saw its potential. I think S is fine. I'm sorry, A. I'm sorry. I apologize. You were right there. A. I apologize.
Top of A.
Top of A. I think that's appropriate. The Vita met forks in the road that it didn't go in the right direction with, and there were some fundamental system level decisions that I think really hindered its ability to find its way. I also think Sony abandoned it multiple times and like multiple levels. They abandoned it first with first party support, then they abandoned it with third party support. And then it was just independent support basically, and then they just basically by the time the Vita was broken, they wanted it done, and the Vita lasted many more years than they wanted it to. Like it's no doubt true inside the company that they wanted to shut this thing down, and I have that on good authority. And a lot of it had to do with like it was deeply broken, and it's a way into the PSN with this deeply broken machine. Do we really want to continue to like fuck with this and all of the rest? And it's similar stuff that plagued the PSP. It's why PSP never got trophies and all the rest, is because it was so deeply broken. And I think they were leery of that. So I think that like in multiple waves, it never really had a chance to see its way through. And we still don't really know how many units it sold. I think at the low end, people think it's like 15 million. At the high end, it's like 20. And I think that's pretty scrappy performance for a machine that didn't get a lot of AAA support at all, had very few first-party games, although some of the first-party games were sick. I mean, Freedom Wars is a really wonderful game. That Killzone game is, I think, excellent. And I wish they would port that game. Me
too.
And the Uncharted game was pretty good. But the unfortunate reality of getting these games over is that they're going to need to be reworked, not only from an engine level, but just with touch controls. There's like that part of the fucking Uncharted game where you have to have a camera and the light,
right,
and all of that. And
they got a Gravity Rush over, though.
They did get Gravity Rush over, and that was, I think, part of the reason why maybe although I think Gravity Rush was kind of an unsafe place to start, but because of the lackadaisical kind of support from the community with Gravity Rush and Gravity Rush 2, maybe just saying, like, what's the point of even doing this? But I think the back touch controls are another problem, and there were cool ideas and there were bad ideas with this, I guess is what I'm saying. And I think that there's a different path the Vita could have legitimately taken with just a few things being different that I think would have made it not into a PSP level 80 million unit seller, but maybe 50 million units or something, which I think would have been very respectable. And I think those choices include, again, people don't understand. It's like the memory card situation, right? The memory card situation was a good idea. The memory card is what kept the Vita from being cracked open for a long time. The SD cards were a major reason why, and like the memory card stick duo or whatever the fuck it was on the PSP was a major way that people were hacking the machine, and they wanted something proprietary. They just didn't need to charge so much for it. It's like, yeah, we need memory cards. They could even have explained that in some sense, in some elegant marketing way, that like this is part of the security apparatus of Vita, but we're going to charge us a little bit of money for it or whatever. And they started figuring some things out with the re-release of Vita, where they put a little hard drive in it, and not enough to really download very much, but just something. And if that decision was different, if the decision to just maybe get a few more games onto it were different, if we got an Infamous game or a God of War game, would it have mattered? I don't know. But it just never got fully cracked open its potential. It could have been like the machine. I loved it, but I understand why a lot of people didn't. So I'm totally comfortable with a high A for Vita. I mean, I think that's an objective answer.
Okay. Nice. All right. Xbox 360.
I
think this has got to be pretty high.
Yeah.
I think this has got to be at least an A. I'm going to put this like high A.
Yeah, that's fine.
I mean, I could even make an argument for S, I guess. The only thing I have against this console is it was actually like a shitty console that broke all the time.
Right.
Like mine red ringed twice. And like, that's unacceptable. And it's like known for that. Like it happened to so many people. That's my biggest problem with that console. Games on there were awesome though, man. Gears, all the Gears games on there. Halos. What was there? 3. There was ODST. There was Reach. They had some exclusives like Dead Rising also from third parties. They had some good shit, man. I'm trying to think. Oh wait, they can see that. I'll do it over here. I'm just trying to think like what else was on here because it's been so long since I thought about it.
The Xbox 360 was like the default console of the generation, and
for most people, yeah, it totally was.
And it got a lot of things early. It had BioShock first, it had Mass Effect first, it had a lot of timed exclusives. The developers were really interested in it. Microsoft really lubricated the the
Elder
machinery.
Scrolls, Lost Odyssey.
Right. And
Yeah,
the
it's like they
seminal
had good
versions
shit.
of Fallout 3 and Skyrim and
Bayonetta, the best versions of a lot of
right,
games.
right, exactly. And I just think there's an undeniable, like the Xbox 360 was the height of Xbox as a platform, so it fundamentally needs to go. So you could make a low S tier rank for it.
Low S.
Yeah,
I'll put it ahead of the N64.
yeah. Like really, so far the only thing that I'm contending, and we'll get to it, is like the N64. I just think is too high, but everything else I think is I'm pretty comfortable with where everything is. Like it's certainly Xbox is a deeply relevant gaming brand, and that was the height of it. So certainly that's where it belongs. I just don't think they finished strong. They really, that was their whole, the thing about the Xbox 360, and maybe we need more distance from it to really study it more academically, but that's a really great example of like Sony didn't win, you lost. Like how did you had a year advantage, and then the PS3 just stumbled out of the gate and was all totally fucked up. You lost, you know?
Yeah.
And Sony did a lot of things really well. And certainly when the Slim came out and the price was cut in half, basically, and all of the rest, it was a big deal. But it's crazy how much of a lead they had. And just optically, with games, with sales, with install base, with the dynamic of, I noticed that like people were starting to say I'm playing Xbox like I'm playing PlayStation or Nintendo, or like parents would say it, and you know, you would see that in like when we were at IGN, and we would have like the first Friday tour groups, and like parents would come in with kids, and adults would come in to see The Office and all the rest, and it's like a big Xbox like natural kind of furor that I think kind of came and went because it wasn't properly harnessed. And that was their opportunity to kind of put their boot on PlayStation's neck, and they lost that opportunity. So it's never getting. I mean, the fucking reality is it's never getting any better, never getting this good again for the Xbox brand. Like,
right,
because it's totally different. Like what they were chasing with the Xbox 360 is no longer what they're even doing, and so
no, yeah.
And people will always look fondly on the machine. Some strange decisions with it, no doubt, but a lot of. I've said before that the movable in media, and you probably experienced this too, at game trailers, is like just moving around from Xbox to Xbox was so easy because of the hard drives. So that was really cool, but I also feel like that was useless to most people. Like it was almost like made for game developers and made for games journalists and shit like that. But for us, it was really convenient. But then there was weird shit like no onboard Wi-Fi, and like you were saying,
you had to buy the Elite version to get that.
Right, exactly. And then like going with HD DVD. And so like weird decisions there, but then like some really great decisions. I mean, Xbox Live, as we really understand, or I should say online functionality as we understand on a console really started with Xbox 360 in 2005. Of course, there was functionality and online functionality with the PS2 and Xbox, but it was just different. And then the achievement system, I think, is a really revolutionary thing that is everywhere now. It wasn't so obvious. Like it wasn't. That's what's so funny about these things. Like, of course you would have an achievement system. Like, no, not really. No one thought to do that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's some things about the Xbox 360 that I think are really, really special.
Okay. PS2.
For me personally, this is like an A-level machine. This is like my least favorite PlayStation console, but I think for most people, this is an S tier, if not GOAT tier level machine.
I think this is GOAT tier level machine. I'll settle for an S if you want to.
Well, I don't want to. Do we need more goats? I don't know. Like,
yeah. If they're a goat, Colin, they're a goat. There's no quota.
Yeah, it's like I personally it's an objective thing for me. It's not deeply subjective for me on PlayStation 2 because I loved the PlayStation 2, but this was when I loved the GameCube as well, and when I was playing Xbox, and people overestimate its install base as being that was the resonance of the machine, and I just simply contend that wasn't true at the time, and it's certainly not true now. The PS2 could be had for $100 for much of its life cycle, and it was widely available in emerging markets and even third world markets, and was manufactured until 2013, I want to say. So
Mm-hmm.
it was the first DVD player that a lot of us got. It was the cheapest DVD player. It did have a very strong catalog of games, of which I can rattle off many, many, many of them that I love, from Metal Gear to Onimusha and beyond. Fucking Dark Cloud and Rogue Galaxy and all these weird things that I loved about it. A lot of different role-playing games, a lot of different action games, shooters. The Time Splitters games are about to come out, which is super cool, back on PSN,
Mm-hmm.
which were at home on PlayStation. But I also just think that it became, the PS2 era to me felt very commercial, which is cool, and there's nothing wrong with that. But the cool shit didn't seem to be happening from my perspective there. For every time I would play an Onimusha, there would be a Super Mario Sunshine on on GameCube or something, or Rainbow Six 3 on Xbox, where I'm like, this just feels kind of better, or I don't know. It was the mass market baseline machine, and I think that's fine. But to me, I never vibed with the PS2 like a lot of other people did.
I think
Yeah.
there was a lot of like really sick games on here, like Eco. I love
I don't
Shadow
like
of
Eco at all, but
Colossus.
I know, again,
I love it.
yeah, I know, and
Shadow of Colossus.
right, people love these games. Shadow of the Colossus,
Yeah.
I'm much hotter on than Eco,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, I mean,
Katamari
God of War
Damacy.
games, Twisted Metal Black.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a shit ton of games on there, no doubt. That's why I'm saying it's an objective thing, that it would be a high S or GOAT ranked console just from an objective lens.
Yeah.
I just personally didn't have that experience with it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Final Fantasy 10, 12, SOCOM 2,
12 was nice. 10 I didn't.
Dragon Quest 8,
Dragon Quest 8 was very nice.
Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2,
Yeah,
Devil May Cry, all three Devil May Cries,
I only
Burnout,
played
Sly,
the first one. Sly, Ratchet.
Jack.
Jack I didn't really care about. Yeah, the like we said earlier, God of War is on there, God of War 2.
Gran Turismo.
Even the show starts on PS2 as well.
PS2.
So yeah, there's no doubt, right? It's just for some reason, it's just I gotta say I was also PS2 came out when I was in 11th grade, and then really hit its stride when I was in college, and that was the relevant machine. There was like nothing else that was relevant at that era as far as that was concerned. And by the time I left college, the PS3 had just come out. So, so maybe it's a time and place thing. So yeah, I'm fine with whatever you think is appropriate for it. You know, I really am.
I would put it at GOAT, but I will. Yeah, okay. I will settle for top of the S.
Well, we can reassess all of this, so let's just get it up there for now.
All right. The DS, dude.
This
has got to be very high.
This is a GOAT level machine.
Right,
I think.
I agree.
Dude, the DS was so good. And again, a lot of it had to do with just the backwards compatibility with Game Boy Advance. So you were just going in with this huge catalog of games, and then you could really experientially take things on as they came. And before you knew it, at least before I knew it, it's like, damn, dude, the Phoenix Wright games really snuck up on me. I loved those games. Yeah. The Professor Layton games. Excellent. I had brought up Dragon Quest 9 earlier, and I loved that game. Dude, I played that game forever. Well, the quest log and all that kind of shit. Oh, I love it.
I should play it.
There's a lot. The later Metroidvania, Castlevania games from Ega are on DS as well. There's a lot of fucking games on DS. A lot of them.
Huge library.
Really, again, doing the generational combination of GBA plus DS is really an insane library of games, dude. Just an absolutely incredible. The Final Fantasy Tactics Advance 2 was on DS. Of course, Advance 1 was also great on GBA. There's a lot of really good stuff there. And again, good ports. Some questionable shit going on too. Like, I really never really liked. It was cool to get Final Fantasy 3 for the first time in the West, but I hated that chibi style 3D art, like that cheap.
Garbage.
I
feel like I didn't mind it, but I know a lot of people didn't like it.
And then they did it with 4. They were going to keep going. I remember the original plan being reported is they were going to do 5 and 6 as well in that style, and then it just never did more than that. But I felt like they were trying to get into like modern game making with 3D aesthetics and stuff on the DS, which I was like, just don't do that. You know, now some games did it really well. What was that game, Moon? Remember that game?
Oh yeah, that sounds very.
It was like the shooter.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, the DS was phenomenal, and I'm happy to put that in the GOAT category. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, the DS, fucking incredible system. Loved it. All right, Colin. So let's look at the list. You got a problem with the N64 being an S tier. What else? Is that it?
Yeah, I think that's like the biggest glaring one to me is like, I'm fine with that because I still do have the Nintendo fanboy deep within waiting to bust out, you know?
Yeah.
And so I am totally fine with all of the Nintendo stuff so high on the list. I'm perfectly fine with that. But that would be the one that I would probably change if I were to change any of these.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. But I think overall, I'm very comfortable with this list, and it's a compromise. Yeah. It's like Congress.
Yeah,
you know, we have to compromise.
I can't stand down on the 64.
That's perfectly fine. I'm not asking you to.
Bottom, I just gotta keep it up there.
I think I'm good with everything else, though.
All right. Yeah, we can go over this one more time.
I think the one thing I would change though is the not enough XP. I would switch that to something else, like because we have more than enough experience with Switch. It's not really what we're trying to say.
Yeah, well, it's just like it's not over.
Right. I just don't like. Are people going to understand what we're saying here? You know.
Yeah, well, we can just like
just leave it. Can you leave it down? Where? Oh no, you can't. Now you can't put it back.
No, I can't put it back
because we committed.
I don't think you can delete it.
That's all right. Just put it back where it was. That's fine. Everyone understands. All right. So yeah, for the audio listeners, I guess you want to go through it.
Yeah. So we'll do trash tier. Ouya. Then the Virtual Boy. Not an FXP. The 3DO. We've barely played it. And the Switch is also in here because the Switch is not over yet. The run. And PS5 and Series X are not on this list, so we're just throwing the Switch in there for now. C, Xbox One, Wii U, Sega Master System, Sega Game Gear, and the Turbo Graphics. B, PSP, the Wii, Atari 2600, and the Sega Saturn. A tier, we got the PS Vita, the GameCube, the original Xbox, 3DS, Dreamcast, and Sega Genesis. S tier, PS3, Super Nintendo, PS4, original Game Boy Advanced, Xbox 360, Nintendo 64. And the GOAT category, we have the NES, the PS1, the PC, PS2, and the DS.
I'm comfortable with this. Okay. The only machine that we're missing here, we could have done some of the earlier machines too, but I think that's all like whatever. But Neo Geo was one of the machines.
Neo Geo.
But it is more than a machine, like than a console, which is fair. But that's the only thing that I felt like might have been missing. But everything else is. Yeah. And I guess you could have like put the links in here and shit like that if you really want to get crazy. But
or
the Jaguar, right? The Jaguar, which I don't think I. Oh no, actually, I did play the Jaguar, but not at the time. So I didn't have much experience with that either. But yeah, this is good.
All right. Let's do one more.
Okay.
It'll be shorter.
Okay.
So we're going to do the best Final Fantasy games, the mainline Final Fantasy games with numbers, I guess.
Okay.
Not like spin-offs, not like Legends or whatever.
Wait, what are these Final Fantasy 14, all these different 14 ones?
These are expansions of 14.
Okay, cool.
So, but if you don't want to do those, Colin, we don't have to do the 14 ones.
Well,
if you want to leave 14 out of it.
I don't know no, 14 and 11 should be in it, but maybe just as one product,
Just base? Okay.
Well, I guess that in and of itself is a problem because 14's base.
Yeah,
but as we understand it now, Realm Reborn,
Yeah, it was the start.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. Let's take it. Let's do it.
All right. Hold on. Let's start with. Let's get some stuff that we would know right away. Let's start off hot, Colin. Final Fantasy VI.
S. I mean,
S tier.
I would argue that's the best Final Fantasy game.
Easy S, no problem.
Yeah. Don't know that there's much to. I mean, there's a lot to say about it, but I don't want to spoil too much about it, even though it is 30 years old this year, which is crazy, and it makes me feel so old because I remember buying it in the store. It's crazy how time moves so quickly, but it was always a very impactful game for me. It was unlike anything I'd ever played. I was enamored with this game when it came out.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if I ever told you guys, it's up in the attic. I wish I had it, but I took a wood shop class in middle school, and I made a boat and I named it the Magitech, and I like it
Cool.
was like painted on the side of it, like what it was called. And so yeah, I love Final Fantasy VI. And for those who have not played it, it's just play it, dude. It's so fucking special and so wonderful. And I really, really encourage you to give it a go. And sorry, can you hear the dog in the background? Sorry if you can.
Yeah, just barely. It's fine. Dogs bark.
Yeah, she's a little son of a bitch, isn't she? So yeah, 6. Do you agree?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I put 6 in S tier easily. All right, let's do Final Fantasy 1, Colin.
I don't know. I mean, it's not a very meaty game. It's not a very compelling game. It's the first Final Fantasy game.
Yeah.
I would say a B or an A, but just because but I maybe a B. It's not the Final Fantasy game I'd recommend, but but at the same time, it's also it's so short. You can beat it in under 10 hours, especially with the all the quality of life features. I wish I had my PS4 up here, my PS5 up here, so I can see how quickly I platinumed it. But I bet you I did it in under 10 hours.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's one of those games that's not wonderful, but it's certainly genetic and interesting. There's like a quality to it, and it is like the revolutionary class based Final Fantasy that we know today in its earliest form. So that's kind of cool. But yeah, it's maybe a little crazy calling it an A tier game. So
cool. All right. How about Final Fantasy 5?
I would say that's an A tier game personally. That is so again, not a great story, and it's so funny that this is coming up now, although I guess it's not that funny, but so last year when the Pixel remasters came to PS4, I platinumed 1, 2, and 3, and 4. And we were doing them for Knockback, but Knockback's kind of on a hiatus now. So I had been thinking recently, like I should just play 5 because I was waiting to play it for the show, but I'm never going to do that now. So, and I haven't played it in a while. So as you remember, 5 didn't come out in the United States when it came to SNES, and we had to wait until it was on PS1 and late in the PS1's generation. And that was the big, so there was that collection with 5 and 6, and then later the collection with 4 and Chrono Trigger. And 5 was the real mystery for everyone, unless you played like a ZSNES or SNES at 9X version of it, like an emulated version of it that was like fan translated or whatever. No one really played Final Fantasy V in the West. So when I got it, I mean, what I immediately glommed onto it that first time I played through it was the story's whatever, but it's really dynamic with the class system, and the class system taken to the nth degree. And I really, really like the way that they play with the systems, such that you can have and I guess you could do the math at how many classes there were times 4 characters, but it's like you can have seemingly endless permutations of characters, really cycle through them, borrow each other's skills and all that, and make like these really cool characters. And Final Fantasy V was neat. So you can have, as I recall, like if you were a ranger, you used a bow and arrow, but you can like you can glom on your mage's white magic skill as like your other skill and kind of bind things together. Really, really neat. Later on with 6 and into, so like people know, but 6 kind of went to the 4 style of character classes where everyone has a character class, but it's locked, and they went into messing with magic systems, and that was taken to the nth degree, I think, in 7 with the materia system. So they decided to go in a different direction, but this was a really cool, and this was the last time they really ever did something like this, So I think 5's a really special game, personally.
Cool. Yeah, I played it first time last year, and I did enjoy it. The job system was real fun. I got addicted to it, leveling up every single job. Stories, whatever, it's fine. Villains, whatever, but I think the job system really elevates it all. All right, let's do. What did I want to do with you? Oh, I'm curious what you're gonna think of Final Fantasy X.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the 10 is the only Final Fantasy game that I played that I didn't beat, and I've played and beaten all of the core Final Fantasy games except for 10 and 15. I played them all, but I didn't beat 10 and 15. I just don't really like Final Fantasy X. There's just something about the characters in it that really bother me. I've tried to, so I got it when it came out. I've said in the past that it was my first game I ever bought online from like an online retailer. And I think it was because me and my friend at the deli I worked at were able to get like $10 off 2 copies or something. It's like something ridiculous like that. So I was really excited about it. Bought it. And I remember the demo. What did the demo come with? It was the bouncer, right? No. Was
I don't
it?
remember. I
There was
don't
a Final
remember a
Fantasy
demo.
X demo with something, and you fought like the crab enemy or something in it. I'm sure people out there remember. So the gameplay wasn't the problem because I bought it after I played the demo. I was excited about it. I was like, oh yeah, shit. And I loved, I was there day one, 7, 8, 9. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I was there month one with 6. So, and Dagan bought 4. So that's how I was exposed to that. But I just think 10 missed with me with characters. But the thing is that I understand fully that, and I've tried not many times, but multiple times since to play it again, specifically when it came to Vita. I was like, I'm going to really sit down and play this game now. And like, I just didn't like it. Again, it was the characters that really bothered me. Like I wasn't into the characters. The voice acting I felt like was really grating. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's something that I just have to get back to, but I'm afraid of even putting some sort of, like, for me, that's like a C level Final Fantasy game, but I just don't think that that's
Sure.
probably reflective of
The general.
reality in some sense,
Yeah.
or like it is my reality, I guess, but I know that how people feel about the game. So I'm not trying to insult it, but that's where I would personally put it.
Okay. Let's put it at a high B for now.
Okay.
I could see it maybe being low A, but we'll see as we get further in. All right. Oh, this one I'm really curious about too. Final Fantasy VIII.
Um, Final Fantasy VIII is fundamentally broken, and that's like my major problem with it. It's like a aesthetically and like with the characters and stuff, it's maybe an A or a B level Final Fantasy, but the gameplay, for people that don't know, it could basically be argued that the best way, the most effective way to play Final Fantasy VIII is to fight as little as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the game scales. You're going to need to fight to such a degree that you're going to need to use the junction system and stuff like that. But there's no reason for you to fight needlessly in the game because you're just making it more difficult for yourself in some sense. And
Yeah.
so I know when it came out on PS1, I actually started playing it a little bit, and I never went back to it, but I was looking things up online, and I saw that there were several walkthroughs that were basically like, yeah, like you should just run away from as many fights as you can, and this is how you
Mm-hmm.
kind of want to manage these sorts of things. And I'm like, that sucks. Why is the game so fucked like that? Now they knew it was fucked because they never did this again, and scaling and all that kind of stuff in different permutations appears in other games that I actually like. Like Lunar is probably the biggest example of that. But generally speaking, I don't like scaling mechanics,
I don't either.
just because part of playing a role playing game is getting stronger and knowing that you can put the time in to become strong, and that there's some sort of baseline for the enemies in the game, and you can choose to overcome that, and it's all balanced around that. So that's a huge problem in Final Fantasy VIII, and I think it brings it from like the gun sword. I remember seeing everything for the first time, being like, "This fucking looks sick." I was in
Mm-hmm.
like ninth grade or whatever, 10th grade, and I like the characters, I like the world, I like what it's about, but it's not very fun to play, and it
Mm-hmm.
really has nothing to do with the junction system, which I actually think is a cool idea. And there's triple triad and all that, cool, which is cool too, but it really just I don't know if you agree with me what I'm saying about this, but there's
No, I
something
do.
broken about the way you play it.
I like the world and the story and the characters, but I agree. Playing it kind of annoys me. I really don't like the draw system in it. I don't like the level scaling. So, yeah, those are big negatives to me. Like, being incentivized to avoid combat is just like weird, man. It's just like, why? I should want to get stronger in this game. Doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, me neither.
Maybe
So
that's why they never did it again.
right, exactly, and it would be so nice for them to remake 8 one day, and then not in this Final Fantasy 7 remake fucking or anything, but do something to it and just mechanically remake the game so that
Mm-hmm.
it's fun.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know.
What do you think? You think a B, C, B, C,
Yeah, somewhere in there, like low B, maybe let's say for now, and we
low
can.
B? Okay.
Yeah,
All right. Here, I'll do one since you don't have any experience with these.
yeah,
Final
please.
Fantasy 14. I'll do the base game. Uh, it's good. It's probably the worst thing in 14. A Realm Reborn, I would say. It's fine though. It's decent. It cleaned up the game from what it was before, which was fucking dog shit. So I'd say it's a C on this list overall because everything else after that's pretty much better.
So yeah, what's the
So
first expansion after that? Do that one too.
There's a Realm Reborn. Then there is, where is it? There's Heaven's Ward. Where is it? Oh no, wait. This is a Realm Reborn. So this is base 14. That's
I see.
D, the lowest you can get.
Gotcha.
A Realm Reborn we'll put there. Here's Heaven's Ward. Heaven's Ward really elevates the game, I would say. I'd put it in A. Like, this is kind of where Final Fantasy 14 to me started finding its footing and getting that critical acclaim. That's when it started becoming like this series where people are like, yo, this could be the best Final Fantasy game, or it's telling the best Final Fantasy story out of everything. And I think Heaven's Ward is a really great start for that. Maybe let me put in high B for now.
Okay.
For now.
All right.
Because there's some stuff that's better later on. But that's when it really started to kickstart and get some accolades, in my opinion. All right, Colin, this is a weird one. I've never played this one, so I'm going to defer this one 100% to you. This is the only one I haven't played, which is Final Fantasy 2.
Yeah, I'm trying to so I just played it like for the most recent time last year. The first time I played two was like 5, where 2 never had come out here either. It was, I don't know if you know, like there's this whole mystery behind 2 about there was like a translated version of it that was never released, and it was at CES one year or something, and people had played it, and then they just were like, it's not really worth it to bring it out.
Damn.
People are kind of moving on. So it was lost to history, and 3 never even got going, and then they just went immediately to 4 because they felt like people were moving on to the new consoles, and they called it Final Fantasy 2. So that was where all the confusion came from. So 2 was never released here until, and you might remember Final Fantasy Origins, which was a very late PS1 release from 2003. So it might have even been the last PS1 game, if not one of the last PS1 games that's not an annualized sports game or something. And it was 1 and 2 together, and that was the first time I played it. Then it came to PSP in like a somewhat remake form.
Yeah, they had that 1 and 2.
Right, exactly. And those were some of the first PSP games I ever had. And I played it there. And then I'm trying to remember. Oh, yeah. And then I hadn't played it again. It came to GBA as well. But then I played it again on the Pixel Remasters on PS4. And 2 is strange because it does have like a different gameplay mechanic. I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, it's like
I'm looking it up.
It's like Saga, isn't it? How you level up and stuff. By doing
that's what it was. Is like you have this weird leveling up system. Like if you look, especially if you look at the old screenshots of the Famicom versions, they look exactly the same, and I think they were released pretty quickly after each other. So there are no experience points, but rather you get experience for what you had done, and so that's what it was. So if you use like a sword in battle, that guy's sword ability goes up. If you get damaged, your damage ability goes up, and you are like if you get damaged by like a magical attack or an ice magic attack or whatever, then so you become stronger against those in the future. It's actually a pretty interesting idea, but it's broken the same way, and it's not fundamentally broken, and neither is what I'm about to say, but Final Fantasy Tactics was broken in a similar way, where one of the things you can do in the game is to elongate these battles as much as possible and farm job points and keep yourself healed. And I think you would specifically do that with the Chocobo because they can heal. You can like they would heal themselves, but they'll heal everything around them too. So you can just huddle around them, just beat the shit out of this bird, harvest job points, and it just kind of becomes strange because like you're not really wanting to do this. It's a grind, but it's also just kind of a mechanic breaking thing. And Final Fantasy 2 suffers from a similar thing where like it's actually kind of wise to just sit there and just take as much damage as you can. You just become crazy strong. So it shares some of the fundamental stuff from Final Fantasy 1, like buying spells and doing all that kind of stuff. But that's the big thing. Yeah, I was racking my brain trying to figure out like what was there was something fundamentally different about 2. And yeah, that's what it was. So I don't know. It's probably in the Final Fantasy 1 realm of low B or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Low B. All right. Let's see. I'm gonna do Final Fantasy 11. Okay, so I really like this game. I have a big soft spot for it, but it is very archaic and old, and it definitely feels old today. And some of its user experience, I guess, like you definitely got to jump through hoops a lot in this game, which is cool because some stuff feels very rewarding because it takes so long to do. But it's just an old ass game, It's 20 years old, but I still love it a lot. I'm just gonna put it as a C. I think it's a cool ass game. Still play it occasionally. We'll put that as a C.
Okay.
All right, let's do Final Fantasy 10 2. How about that?
I never played it, so
Okay. I'm gonna put it right here. Combat's actually really good in it. Really fun. There's like a job system that's called the Dress Spheres. Really cool. Stories, whatever. But it's a decent sequel. I feel like I don't know. I kind of want to re-examine 8 maybe.
and what do you want to do with it?
I'm not sure. I don't know.
Put it down?
And I'm just like I'm not sure yet. Maybe when we'll finish I'll look at everything again.
But I'm saying,
We'll
is that
see.
the direction you were thinking? Or
I'm not sure what I'm thinking yet.
Okay.
Just where it is right now. I don't know if it needs to go back further or forward more. I'm not sure. Final Fantasy 4, Colin. This is one of your tops, right?
Yeah.
You want S?
Yeah, definitely. Do you like 4?
Yeah, I actually really like 4 a lot.
I think 4 is the strong. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Like 7 and 9 are my favorite. Then it's either a toss up between 6 or 4.
Yeah, I would say there'll probably be one more S-rated one for me, but that's it.
Okay.
And they'll probably be in this order, actually, which is interesting for me anyway. 4 is the strongest Final Fantasy story. I think 6 is a superior game with better characters, and it's wider, and it's a little, especially towards the end, more nonlinear, and there's a lot of optional shit in it, and it's cool. Like, there's so much to love about Final Fantasy 6, but Final Fantasy 4 is just core plot and the deception and all of the rest, and the set pieces and going to the moon and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of really cool shit in Final Fantasy 4. And as you know how I feel about this, I am convinced that Final Fantasy 16 and Final Fantasy 4 are connected to each other.
Oh yeah. You have 100%. That team loves Final Fantasy 4. Final Fantasy 4 was all over the past Final Fantasy 4 expansion. All over it. You go to the moon in it, 4 fiends are there. Lots of similarities in there.
There's go ahead.
I'm gonna say the only thing I don't like about 4, Colin, is I think there's one cheap narrative part in the game. Minor or a spoiler here, I guess, for Final Fantasy 4. So if you don't want to know it, skip ahead like 10 seconds.
You had 33 years to play it. Go ahead.
Yeah, the twins when they sacrifice themselves, but then they don't actually die and they just come back.
Yeah, it's a bummer.
I thought that's kind of cheap.
That was a devastatingly emotional moment. Like. That's what I love about the game.
That's what I'm saying.
It's very Game of Thrones-ish in some sense, just with people dying, but they don't really die.
They don't. Yeah. I get it because they're kids. Probably they didn't want kids to die in it, but
that was what was so powerful about it.
I know
they're 6 years old in the game. 6, and they and they sacrifice themselves like that. I think it's like, there's so many crazy. That's what I'm saying, is that the emotion is ratcheted up so much in 4. Kane's betrayal of the party. All the stuff with Fusoya. I love the stuff with Edge, and they don't give him a lot of room. But you find his kingdom basically. If you want to, you can find like the remnants of his kingdom beforehand and glean a little, Eblon or whatever it's called. And there's Sid and his relationship with Rosa, Rosa's relationship with Cecil. There's a lot of stuff there. I think 6 is the superior game because I think 6's characters. I love Porum and Palom, and I love all the characters really, but I really like when you think about just the lineup of characters in 6, it's like, damn, dude, this is a really, really, really crazy strong list of characters, including the optional weird characters like Gogo and Yamaro, but just getting to know the characters like Locke and Edgar and Sabin and everything. These are better characters. So
and that's my gripe with 6. My one criticism, and I think there's too many characters.
It's definitely too many party members, there's definitely an ensemble, and and really you can beat the game with a fewer characters, but there's really 3 characters because you could let Shadow die, and then you don't have to find Yamaro and Gogo. Plus, you don't have to collect all the all of the characters. I never played it like that because I'm so fucking crazy, but I know you can do all of those things. So even with that, you still would end with a lot of characters in your party.
Mm-hmm.
And it does become a little overwhelming, especially because 6 is primitive enough where you have to have the characters in the party to gain experience. There's no like partial experience share or anything like a party experience. So you can really, but what was so cool about it was how deep you can get with each of the characters. Like you could spend just dozens of hours with Gao, for instance, like going around and jumping into battles and getting their skills. And the same thing with Shrago and the blue magic, like going and stealing that magic from everyone and the tools and science shit. And yeah, oh my God.
Yeah, I like the input commands.
Oh, for
Saban's
Sabin, yeah.
punches and stuff.
Yeah. Really nice.
That shit's cool.
So I think that's like, those games are just indisputably the best for me. I just fucking love those games.
All right. Here we go. Final Fantasy 7.
This is S tier too.
To me,
yeah.
easy S tier.
Yeah.
Easy to S tier. The most important Final Fantasy game, besides 1, I guess, by far. Got the series on the map, brought it to the West, blew up the series. I mean, it's still probably the most popular out of all the games. That's why we're getting the remakes and everything like that. Remakes are excellent too. People love these characters. I love these characters. Cool story, fantastic. These like this eldritch interstellar alien pulling the strings on everything is fucking awesome. I love it. It's so good, man. 10 out of 10 music. So much good shit.
Yeah, there's like
impactful death. The most impactful death, I guess, in gaming, or the most famous.
Yeah, certainly. And yeah, definitely one of them. And yeah, it was like it was like the first fully realized game I'd ever played in some sense, from my own perspective. I think some people had this experience on PC maybe a little earlier. When I play a game like System Shock now, which is a little earlier than 7, I'm like, damn, this is pretty crazy compared to what I was playing at the time.
Yeah.
But Final Fantasy 7 came out when I was in 8th grade, and I was completely obsessed with it. I guess you can't really see it anymore, but on my shelf, I have like the thing from EB Games that I stole, the Final Fantasy 7 thing. And I just really, it's funny, I went on a little bit of an adventure with this game because I really loved it. And then I started to kind of resent it because it's very nerdy, but I was also a kid, so I don't really care. But I felt like, I don't want everyone to be into this genre. It was one of the cool things about this was like no one knew what the fuck I was playing or talking about. And I kind of brought something special and different. And I connected the people online about it in the magazines, but it wasn't really. I remember going into stores like EB and stuff and asking for some of these games, and they were like, well, I don't even know what you're talking about, kind of stuff, you know? And, obviously they had it and it was there, but they had never even saw it. They had one copy of it, whatever it might have been, you know? And that's why so many of these games are so expensive today, is because they didn't make that many and people weren't really buying them. And I was, for some reason, just really into buying as many of these role-playing games as I could, even the ones I didn't like when I did buy Beyond the Beyond and other things. It's like, yeah, all right. I have this full collection of games. And so 7, like you said, brought it to the 4. And I feel like it was just, it's so fleshed out and real. There's nothing, it's not that there's nothing left to the imagination. It's just that it didn't feel like you had to suspend disbelief or get from point A to point B. It was about very serious things. A lot of things I didn't understand at the time. I mean, I would be lying to you if I told you when I first played Final Fantasy 7 front to back when I was fucking whatever I was, 12 or 13, that I understood it. I definitely didn't.
No, but I didn't either.
But I came to play it again and then again, and to the point where I played it probably 4 or 5 times over the years. And then, of course, I think the Final Fantasy VII Remake 2020 and then, of course, Rebirth earlier this year really solidified how powerful the game's narrative is. Even if it's manipulated, it's timely and ever present. And there's something very special about, you're playing at the beginning, you're kind of playing as the bad guys, you're terrorists. And it's like, oh, you're playing, you made the bad guys good and all of that. But I'm like, it's so much deeper than that, because the gradient changes so slowly in the game as people become more immersed in what is happening and their own motivations change for why they're involved at all. And you were saying 6's cast of characters was vast. What was so interesting about this game is how small the cast of characters comparably was. And I think they made it even smaller in the remakes, which is cool. Like, for instance, Sid not being playable. And I assume we'll be able to play as Vincent in the next one, and maybe as Sid too. But
yeah. Yeah, you will.
But
Both of them.
but for now, it is what it is. And so I just feel like the theme of environmentalism is going to be not only ever present in our realities, but become more and more magnified the more time goes on and the more that things begin to decay around us. Because I'm not a climate change alarmist by any stretch of the imagination, as an example, but it's happening and things are changing. And I'm old enough to have, and this is like conversation that I'm finding more and more around me, where it's like people are getting old enough now, and certainly people older than me know this intuitively even better. It's like I'm old enough to know, like, oh, something is changing, like something is different, and this game taps into that. And it's funny that they were tapping into that in the heady Earth Day 1990s, and that they're tapping into it, and it feels just as relevant, if not more relevant today. So the subject matter, I think, is very daring and very interesting and contemporary, which in and of itself was weird. And that's why people longed for Final Fantasy IX by the time we got there, because it's like, damn, dude, like, can we get back to dragons and fantasy and fucking castles and shit like that? And it's like, I get that, but I might be ignorant because I was a kid and I didn't know that these things existed, like the cyberpunk tabletop game and all that kind of stuff, but which came out in the late 80s. But it's like, this kind of showed me, it's like, for some reason, I just didn't really quite comprehend that you didn't have to have a root in fantasy to make a game like this. And there were a few games on SNES that were the same, but not to this extent, you know?
Right.
So that's a lot, but yeah, that's how I feel. I think Final Fantasy VII is an extraordinary game.
Hell yeah. All right. Let's see here. Final Fantasy 16.
A?
Yeah, I'd say so. I really like 16.
Wildly successful.
It's got problems, but I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
I had such a great time going through this game. Great cast. Love Clive so much. Love the story. Really impactful moments in there. Like the whole thing at Phoenix Gate and him losing control and Joshua, their whole relationship. Touching, man. I really loved all of it. Him and Jill getting reunited and getting back together. Sid, amazing in this game. One of the coolest characters in Final Fantasy in a long time. Really fun combat. Very different. Just an amazing game. I wish it ran better, but awesome game.
Yeah. Yeah, well said. I was completely impressed with it, and I was enamored with it. It was so high quality.
Yeah.
That it's one of the most high quality, thoughtful games I've ever played before. And there were times with what was going on screen where I was like, this is insane.
Yeah.
And I remember saying at the time the game came out, I was like, this boss fight was like a team's life for 4 years. That's how fucking crazy this boss fight is. And you could see it. If you know anything about games, you just know when you're playing through this game, regardless of some of the technical hiccups, like you were saying, and some of the framiness, is like, damn, dude, this is fucking dope. This is so good. And I think my biggest complaint about it, it's kind of fading from my memory actually a lot because of all the games we play. But one of the things I remember not liking about it was it was a little easy. And I think that was
too easy.
That was a common complaint, right? And
yeah, it's too easy.
So there's that, but I don't mind the evolution of the combat. I thought the combat going into more action, making it more of an action RPG was very welcome. Now, I know that there are games that are going to be doing this more turn-based combat at a higher level. There's that Expeditions game that's apparently going to try to do it.
All those Atlas games
are
still turn-based.
Right, Metaphor and everything. So that's cool, and I appreciate that. But I don't blame Square for being like, we can't make Final Fantasy games like that anymore. They have to be at the bleeding edge of what is and what is happening. And that used to be fine in menu, but it's a little different now. Now, of course, the games can still be in menu, and Final Fantasy VII Remake kind of toed the line a little bit more, which was cool. And I know that was a little bit more acceptable to people, but I don't mind this evolution. And I thought that the gameplay was staggeringly good. I also feel like the boss fights, like I said, were amazing. That the characterizations were amazing. The soundtrack was sick. I really, really, really loved Final Fantasy 16. I will replay this game for the platinum in the years to come. There is no doubt about it. I did everything I could, but there was, I guess, stuff that I missed or something. So, yeah,
The DLC is good too for both.
that's what I've
Both
heard.
DLCs are really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe when I go to it at that time, I will also play the DLC packs. But yeah, I mean, that's as high quality as it gets, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And just shows Final Fantasy 16 and Final Fantasy 7 Remake and Rebirth are like an amazing trifecta of releases for that franchise.
Yeah. All right, let's do Final Fantasy 12.
Um,
This is a tricky one for me because I haven't played the Zodiac edition.
me neither. Me neither.
That's like the newer one. I only played the base version of the game, and I remember being conflicted on it. I thought it was okay. I wasn't in love with it, but I didn't hate it at the time. But everyone tells me Zodiac edition's way better. Particularly, I didn't really like Vaughn, who was like the main character, I guess. I thought he's kind of weak as a main character, but it has been a long time since I played it, so I'm not sure how I'd feel now. But I guess we can just go on what our experiences with it. What do you think? Do you think like a B or
Yeah, that's
I
where
think B sounds right.
my mind was as well. Just because I was trying to think about it when you were talking. I'm like, I'm pretty sure that 12 is the Final Fantasy game that I played least recently. In other words,
Yeah.
like I played it when it came out. I wrote the strategy guide for it at IGN. I was a senior in college. So that was fall 2006, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And I really liked it, actually. I spent an enormous amount of time with it, and it felt like an attempt to do something a little more contemporary. It felt like, I remember saying at the time, and I'm sure this is common, but it felt like a pseudo MMO with the way that they set it up, and that it was inspired in some way by 11 and what was going on around them. And I liked it, but I never played it again. So I really just have to go on like what my memories of it. And I do actually remember it pretty well, but when I would traditionally do a Final Fantasy series order kind of exercise, I would put them on Twitter every once in a while or whatever. I would put 12 fairly high, comparable to what else has come. But I think that putting that in the B realm, like there's no doubt 6, 4, 7, 5, and 16 are better. And then certainly probably most of the things in the B column are probably even better as well, or as good as. But you're right. I bought the Zodiac edition, but I've never I've never played it.
Just haven't played it.
So maybe I should get to that at some point and have a better
Same
view of this. But I remember liking 12. I do remember the conventional wisdom about it being people did feel like they were two separate games. I don't know if you remember that argument that I think like there was some turnover with like the producer and or the director.
Yeah.
And
there was something like that. Yeah.
And that they do feel like maybe two visions coming together in some way. But I wouldn't want to recheck how much I was being influenced by other people now that I'm older and have seen a lot more, if that's truly what I see or not. But I remember liking 12. So, and I would have been this would have even been an era when I was still feeling pretty critical about 7. So if I like 12, that's probably a pretty accurate feel.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, let's do Final Fantasy 15. You're not a fan of this
No,
one, right?
I could never get more than 10-ish hours into Final Fantasy 15. And I didn't like it at all. It's not well considered with me, but I'm not going to insist on anything here because I just don't know enough about it. It's similar. I've seen much more of 10 than I've seen of 15.
Yeah, I think 15's okay. I liked it at the time, but as time went on, I started to like it less and less. But this game also got like a new version too, the Royal Edition. They changed a lot of stuff in it, like being able to play as other party members and stuff. But I just haven't played it, so I don't really know. I think for now, I just put it at like the top of C. Like, there's some cool stuff in it, but I also have just the bitterness of 13 verses turning into that. I'm just like, damn, this is not what I wanted when I first saw verses 13. And I just think back to like the Leviathan boss fight in that game, dude. Jesus, what a fucking nightmare. What a mess, dude. If I played the Royal Edition.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was saying, maybe if I played the Royal Edition, I would bump it higher because everyone does say it's better. I just haven't played it, so I can't put it higher.
Yeah, it vibed with me like 10 did, where I'm like, I just don't like these people. I don't like these characters, and it's going to be hard for me to get into this because I find this so. I don't know what this is. This level of meta irony or whatever you're going for with these characters is too. It's too weird. I don't know what is the grounding element that makes this Final Fantasy. See, that was the thing that bothered me about the way people were talking about 16, where they're like, "This isn't a Final Fantasy game." I'm like, "What the fuck are you talking about? This is so deeply insane. A Final Fantasy game. What are you, crazy?" It was obvious from the first minute of that game how much of a Final Fantasy game it was, and I feel like 15 was missing that for me completely, but 13 was too. So it had been a while since we'd even seen that. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like if I've played Royal Edition, it'd probably be around here, but I haven't, so I have to just put it here for now.
Okay.
Let me do in 14 expansion, just get one out of the way. Let's see, Shadowbringers. I'm gonna put very high up here. I'd put it higher than these, honestly. This was one of the best expansions I've ever played. This has probably, Colin. This is like where the villain that's like, yo, this villain is like, could be the best Final Fantasy villain of all time. This guy in this game, Emmett Selk. Incredible character. What's great about Colin is you get a lot of time with this character and you get to see his perspective and why he does things. And it kind of is like one of those moments where it's like, yeah, maybe I would have done what he did in his shoes. Just a really powerful story that leads up to the final expansion of that arc. Incredible game, universally praised by everyone. Everyone loves the story, and I think it's fucking fantastic.
Cool. I defer to you. Yeah. I've by the way, with Final Fantasy 14, I've always thought of getting into it, but I don't think I like it. And watching videos of it and stuff, I'm like,
there is
I just don't think it's for me. Yeah.
Huge free trial though, if you ever want to play it. It's like the first 3 expansions free. And you can play the game pretty much all the story stuff by yourself.
I would definitely have to do that because I couldn't play with someone.
You could play with like AI bots for a lot of it now, so if you wanted to, you could. But yeah, the story's great. The only bad part about 14 is the beginning of it that you have to start with is like the worst part of all of 14. It's the hardest part to get through. But once you get through that, it's like all uphill from there. But just a slow start. Okay. I don't know. Like After Years, did you even play After? I've never even played.
I did. Years. Yeah, After Years is pretty bad.
You want it in like?
Yeah, I would put it in
C,
like
D?
Yeah, I would be fine with it being in D. I mean, a lot of people are like, are really in like what the fuck territory.
I have not heard good things about it. Everyone I hear about it says it's bad.
Yeah, it's not. So. It was really disappointing because it came to WiiWare first. You might remember that, and that was like one of the few times where I was like, all right, I guess so, and like because I was like totally like not even playing the Wii at all anymore. But then it came to PSP in the Final Fantasy IV Complete Collection. And that's probably the best way to play it if you can access that version of the game. It would be pretty cool for them to release. They're never going to release that because I don't think anyone gives a shit about the After Years. But it kind of ruins a lot of the lore too. It's kind of how people feel about that new Harper Lee book. That's like the sequel to Kill a Mock, or not the Kill a no, is it the Kill a Mockingbird? To Kill a Mockingbird. What was the sequel called? I don't remember. But anyway, she wrote, Go Set a Watchman. So To Kill a Mockingbird was 1960. And then she wrote a sequel, Go Set a Watchman, in 2015. And everyone's like, fuck, it kind of messes things up. I think people feel that way about Final Fantasy IV After Years.
All right. Final Fantasy 9.
A? Or maybe high B if you would prefer. But
I put it in A.
Yeah.
In my opinion. Final Fantasy 9 is my second favorite Final Fantasy out of all of them. I love.
We can put it higher if you want. I mean, if you regard it that high,
I think. No, I mean that's totally fine. Like, I just think I like it more than 5. Obviously, I just think it's an incredible game. Did get back to the basics of the fantasy setting. I think it did it really well. Really cool characters. I really fell in love with all of them. Steiner, Zidane, Vivi, of course. Everyone loves them. Great world. A very late PS1 game, very late.
Yeah, it was that summer before. It was that summer before PS2, I think.
Yeah, it looks really great. The only big drawback for this game is when you get into a battle, it takes a long time to start before you start fighting. It shows like different angles of the battlefield. Too long before you start fighting.
Yeah, I don't remember that. That's funny.
Incredible game. Hoping for that remake soon.
Yeah, it's been cooking for a while. Hopefully they'll just
Mm-hmm.
drop. I mean, I don't expect a shadow drop, but hopefully we're getting to closer of these announcements than like 2 month availability. I don't really know. I think games companies are starting to realize that there's actually nothing to gain in such crowded environments from announcing games early. Like you might as well just make a furor for a few months and go from
Yeah.
there. 9, I remember being so thirsty for 9 at that time
Oh yeah.
because I was kind of starting to get tired of the 7 furor, and then 8 was, I liked 8 more when I first played it, but then seeing through the seams of that game, and I was just like, damn, this just feels like a return to tradition. And it was a really fun game. I have very fond memories of it. The funniest memory I have is that, remember that bullshit strategy guide that's like the famous Final Fantasy 9 strategy guide? You know what I'm talking about? Where it's like,
Oh, dude, with play
yeah,
online.
where you have to go online to do
Yeah,
all the stuff.
I did do it. It was fucking
Yeah,
a
me too.
nightmare.
Me
I
too.
remember faking sick to play Final Fantasy 9 stay home from school, and I remember just doing it on our computer, and it was so shit, dude. It was so annoying.
Yeah, it was. I'll never forget that. That's like for me, like the thing I remember most about that experience. I also really loved the. It's a small thing, but the return of the Moogles in the game is kind of
Mm-hmm.
cool. Yeah, so Final Fantasy 9, it'll be very cool to see what they have done with it. I'll be very curious to know, because we know it's not going to be this high budget
No, no,
trilogy,
no.
but I want to see what they do with it, and if it can kind of set. It would be so cool if they just went back to all these games and reimagined them differently, from one
Sure.
another. Like when they said, "Oh, we can't redo Final Fantasy 6. It would take us 30 years or something like that." Remember they said something stupid like, I was
Mm-hmm.
like, "What are you talking about? Like,
Yeah.
you don't have to
I
do
don't know.
everything like this. No one's asking you to crack the fucking egg open again, like and
Yeah,
mix it
you don't
up."
need to do 3 parts for everything.
So
Some games are fine. It's just one part.
yeah, but shout out to 9. That's a really really special game, and
Mm-hmm.
it's cool that it's been for some years now, I think, available to play on modern consoles.
Yeah. It
So
has.
everything's all wrapped up there. So you now have access to everything at this point, which is pretty sweet.
Pretty much everything except
13, I
on
guess.
PlayStation. You have access to everything except 13.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can play 13 on Xbox, but not on PlayStation. All right. Speaking of 13, let's just do 13.
Um. Yeah.
Uh,
I'll be curious to know what you have to say about this.
I put it at low C,
Yeah, that's fine with me. I think.
honestly, because I think the writing is fucking awful in this game. I think the characters are pretty annoying too. The combat's fine. I think the combat's all right. The linearity of the zones you go through for the vast majority of the 2/3 of the game are like painfully linear, where it's like no room for exploration. There's just like no towns really at all in
Mm-hmm.
this game either. It's fucking weird, man.
Yeah, it
Like,
is.
I don't know what happened.
It's a incredibly claustrophobic game, in my opinion, and that's cool with some games. That's what you want. You want linearity and direction, but not in a Final Fantasy game. It's not to say that you need to. There's always a point A to point B. And
Yeah,
and
exactly.
later on maybe some side things to do. But I'm not looking for them to reinvent that. I just when I was a strategy guide writer, I did like all of the boss fight videos for the game and
Mhm.
at the site, and I just hated it. Like I just was like, but what was funny about it was the gameplay, and I especially discovered this breaking down the gameplay and trying to write scripts and stuff, is actually the gameplay is definitely the shining star of the game, but that the
Yeah.
game, but that everything around it is so subpar that it's tough to even see it for what it is. Because if you just strip the gameplay out of there, that what was it called, the paradigm shift system or whatever,
Yeah. Paradigm, yeah.
and I was like, damn, it was actually pretty cool. And it was different.
Mhm.
It wasn't very similar to 16. It did reinvent things and try to do something different. And I don't think that in and of itself is a bad thing. It's just that nothing's going to be good enough to overcome this claustrophobic linear Final Fantasy that you've constructed, where you promise people, oh, it opens up after 40 hours, where it's like, that's a lot to ask of someone. And my journey with Final Fantasy 13 ended here, because I see that there are the sequels here as well, Lightning Returns and whatever the hell the other one
Mhm.
is called. So, what is it? Um,
It's
Final
just Final
Fantasy
Fantasy
13
13
2
2.
and then Lightning Returns, right? So
Yeah.
I have no idea. I remember one of those games was about like the end of the world, right, or something, or there was like a countdown
Yeah.
clock.
That's Lightning Returns, yeah.
So, again, if they release those games natively on PS5 or even PS4, I'll play.
Oh,
I
yeah,
would
I'd
play them.
revisit
I would.
them.
I would sit
Mhm.
down and play the trilogy for sure, just out of
Yeah,
curiosity
absolutely.
and to like seal that gap, because I know I eventually have to do that with 10 and 10-2 and 15. I just because I'm pretty up on everything else, so
Mhm.
which is good. So I might as well just seal those gaps up. But I don't know if I'll ever do
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah. Totally. All right, let's just do the sequel
Yeah.
right after that. I think the sequel's better, definitely. I could see a low B for the sequel, I would say. It's quite a bit improved. Way better story, way better characters. I mean, I like Lightning a lot, actually, in 13. I think she's cool. But I think 13.2, they just do a way better job of making it a more compelling game. It should have been like what 13 should have been probably the first time. Lightning Returns, I also like more than 13. I'd put it probably right there. Probably in C category, though. I think it's a little worse than 13 too, but I still enjoy it.
Okay.
Still worth playing.
So strange to me that they decided to. I don't know what they were. Very weird time with Square Enix. Like
Recouping money. I don't know
yeah, I
what
guess
there's
so.
like.
It's just like, damn, dude, go
Yeah, it
move
was weird.
on. You know, what are you
Weird
doing?
time. Yeah, you're making sequels to the Final Fantasy that no one wanted sequels for. Weird ass shit. All right, Final Fantasy 3, Colin.
Um, I'm not crazy about Final Fantasy 3. I think that it's
I think it's all right.
yeah, it's fine. It's C, high C, maybe something like that. It's a little boring, and it was funny because I had never played it in, and I think the pixel remasters were the first time, and I think this is true that they were that Final Fantasy 3 was released here that wasn't like the remake version of it from DS that came out in like 2006, because that was the first time 3 ever came out here, and that was the first time all of us played it natively. And like I said earlier in the conversation, I have a total distaste for that graphical style that they parlayed in a Final Fantasy 4 on DS as well. So I wanted to make sure when I played it through on last year, the pixel remaster, like maybe it's just my bias against this graphical aesthetic and there is something deeper to this game, but it's really just, they were making these games so quickly at this time that I don't know how much you can really do. You're making these games in like a year or less. I'm pretty sure they made even Final Fantasy 4 in like 10 months or something, which is crazy. Like I don't even know
Yeah,
how
that is.
how that's possible, but
Yeah.
so I just don't think there's anything that it's clear why they didn't give a shit about Final Fantasy 3 ever even coming out here, that they prioritized 5, they re-released 1 and 2 multiple times, and then they kind of just circumvented 3 until that big GB or DS drop rather. And so yeah, I'm perfectly comfortable with it being a C. It's a if the pixel remasters, you should play it if you're curious, but I think you'll find that you'll have more notable experiences if you keep going.
Yeah. All right, I'll just go through these expansions really quick. Endwalker, really good. The end of the decade long storyline, they actually nailed the landing. They hit it. Satisfying conclusion of that storyline. Very happy with it. Stormblood, I'm not as hot on as many people are. I think it's all right. I don't love it. I'm just putting the C right now. Dawn Trail, the newest expansion. The story, the first half of the story is kind of whatever, pretty boring actually. They make you the expansion becomes about this character named Wook Lamont that no one really likes that much, and she's so heavily involved into it, so she kind of drags it down. So, but it's the content in the expansion is very good though. All the other stuff, I'd put it a little above Shadow or Stormblood. And Revenant Wings, I haven't played this. This was a DS game,
Yeah,
Colin.
is
I
this
don't know if you
a
ever played it. This is Final Fantasy 12 sequel.
yeah. Oh, so I always looked at this as more of like a Dirge of Cerberus or Crisis Core level. Like, why would
Yeah,
this be here and those wouldn't be here? You know,
I don't know. It's yeah. I don't know why exactly
I
either.
remember
They
I
should
didn't
be here
play
if
this
this is
game
here.
though, so I don't know.
We'll just leave it there
Okay.
then. It's fine. All right, so let's review the list, Colin. Anything right now that you're seeing that you want rearranged?
No, I'm actually perfectly comfortable, I think, with this list. I mean, I'm gonna have to defer to you on a lot of
Yeah, the
the
online
sequels
stuff.
and the DLC, but yeah, I'm comfortable
Yeah.
with this. I think this is fine.
Okay. Yeah, I think our top three are guaranteed locks. Those are incredible games
Yeah,
no matter what.
I'm very happy with that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's good then. There it is. So I'll just go over the rankings real quick. Revenant Wings, we're just not going to rank because we haven't played it. D, Final Fantasy 4 After Years, and Final Fantasy 14, the base game. C, 14, Stormblood. Then we got 15, then 3, Lightning Returns, A Realm Reborn, 11, then 13. Then in B, we got Heaven's Ward, 10, 10 2, 1, 8, 2, 12, 13 2, and 14 Dawn Trail. Then in the A category, we got Shadowbringers, 9, 5, 16, Endwalker. And at the tippy top in the S tier, we got the GOATs. We got 6, 4, and 7.
Yeah, that's nice. This was fun.
That's a nice list. Yeah.
Thank you for doing it with me. That was good.
Yeah.
I want you to. I want you to prepare for the Mega Man one. I'll do.
Well, you just gotta tell me when you want to do it.
Yeah, we'll do it after the live show, maybe, or something. So we'll give ourselves a little bit of time.
Yeah.
I need you to extemporaneously discuss all of them with me in great depth. Pharaoh Man, Gravity Man.
Yeah, because I'm going to incorporate their stages probably in my decision making.
Cool.
Also,
that'll be fun.
Theming and how good it all is. Yeah, it's going to be a process.
But yeah, in the meantime, this was a fun exercise. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Brad, thank you for facilitating it and using your expertise here on Discord. I don't know how to do anything, so. All right. Well, that was fun. Nice little reprieve from recent events and get people's minds off of things. We hope you guys are well out there. And of course, I talked about it already on Sacred Symbols, but just for people that haven't listened to that episode yet, we talk about Dustin wrote a letter that I read to the audience, and he's hanging in there, and he appreciates all of you guys and all of your thoughts and your kindness. He feels it. He knows it. And I do too. And I deeply appreciate that. So know that he's on our minds, of course. With that said, Brad, anything going on with you? What is today? Wednesday. I have to.
Today's Wednesday.
Yeah, I have to finish writing the show for tomorrow that we're recording, and then get to the bar at some point to say goodbye to my friend. But yeah, what's going on with you?
Just gonna eat after this. Probably a chicken salad. Go to the gym, and I've been playing Death Stranding Director's Cut, so I'll probably play a little more of that.
Cool, man. Well, have fun. Be well. Enjoy your food.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm gonna get out of here too. Get back to work. But appreciate all of you guys. Hope you enjoyed the show. Thank you for all of your support here on Patreon, patreon.com/laststandmedia. Early ad-free access, laststandmedia.store for merch. We'll see you next time. Until then, goodbye. Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is a product and trademark of Last Stand Media and Colin's Last Stand LLC, and is proudly recorded in the USA. The show is conceived by, is written by, and is directed by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-hosts are Chris Raygun Maldonado and Dustin Furman. The show is produced by executive producer Dustin Furman. It's edited by associate producer Ben Smith. All of Last Stand's theme music is by my best friend, Ramon Narvaez. As you know, all of Last Stand's shows, including Sacred Symbols, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer level on Patreon, our highest tier, and we're grateful for your thoughtful and kind contributions to our independent endeavor. Thank you.